Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second day of deliberations, and if I could ask everyone to take their seats, that would be much appreciated. Today, if you're following the agenda, we are on page 13, I believe, and we are on item number 16, which is ICCROM's report of the Secretariat and of the Council. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the the Chair. No, I'm not going to say anything. The Chair of Council to give her report. Thank you, Madam.
Merci Madame la Présidente de me donner la parole. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les délégués, Monsieur le Directeur général, Mesdames et Messieurs, le Conseil que vous élisez est un organe subsidiaire de l'Assemblée générale qui établit les objectifs et les priorités stratégiques de l'organisation ainsi que les lignes directrices des programmes actuels et futurs de l'ICCROM, qui contrôle l'exécution de vos décisions, qui examine l'exécution du programme et du budget, ainsi que le travail et les actions de l'ICCROM, qui approuve les programmes et budgets biennaux avant qu'ils vous soient soumis. Le Conseil a également à remplir un rôle particulier concernant le recrutement du directeur général, dont il propose, comme vous le savez, la nomination à l'Assemblée générale. J'aimerais tout d'abord remercier mes collègues élus au Conseil depuis 2 années et saluer tout particulièrement ceux qui vont quitter le Conseil après cette Assemblée générale, certains parfois au bout de 8 années au sein du Conseil. Je tiens également à remercier le Secretariat de l'ICCROM pour le soutien qu'il apporte au quotidien au travail du Conseil, notamment par la qualité des présentations qui lui sont faites, mais aussi par l'étroite collaboration qui est mise en œuvre entre le Secrétariat et le Conseil. Monsieur le Directeur général, je vous remercie pour cela. Le Conseil a choisi, dès son élection en novembre 2013, de constituer, ainsi que le précédent Conseil, un certain nombre de groupes de travail sur les sujets principaux de son mandat. Vous avez déjà vu les résultats du groupe de travail sur la discussion thématique de l'Assemblée générale et nous reviendrons au cours de mon exposé, mais aussi d'ici la fin de cette session de l'Assemblée générale, sur le travail de certains d'entre eux. Ce que je vous propose à présent, puisque vous l'avez compris, beaucoup d'éléments du travail du Conseil se transcrivent dans l'ensemble des documents et dans l'ensemble de l'ordre du jour de l'Assemblée générale qui est en train de se dérouler, c'est de vous faire une présentation sélective de quelques dossiers clés sur lesquels le Conseil s'est penché pendant ce mandat de 2 années. D'une manière générale, le Conseil a apporté depuis 2 ans une attention toute particulière à la question de la durabilité financière de l'ICCROM. Vous vous en rappelez, depuis plusieurs années, de manière systématique, le Conseil organise un groupe de travail qu'il charge d'une réflexion approfondie sur ce sujet. Ces aspects de durabilité financière ont été surveillés par le Conseil, notamment à travers le suivi du respect de leurs obligations par les États membres. À cet égard, je tiens à souligner, après Monsieur le Directeur général, l'aboutissement heureux des négociations avec la Russie, qui a permis l'engagement d'un plan de paiement pluriannuel avec des versements réguliers. Et nous nous réjouissons très fortement, et au nom du Conseil, je tiens à le souligner une fois encore, du retour de la Russie parmi les membres de l'Assemblée générale. En revanche, je dois vous faire part de la préoccupation du Conseil concernant les obligations financières du gouvernement italien en sa qualité de pays hôte. À ce jour, nous n'avons reçu aucune information pertinente de la part du gouvernement italien, que ce soit sur la question de l'exonération d'impôts, ou sur celle du paiement de l'arriéré de contribution que ce gouvernement a l'obligation de payer en vertu de l'accord de siège pour l'entretien des locaux et la sécurité. Outre les fonds dépensés pour rembourser l'impôt sur le revenu des membres du personnel au cours des 10 dernières années, qui s'élèvent actuellement à 1 718 844 €, l'arriéré au titre des dépenses de sécurité et d'entretien encouru par l'ICCROM d'un montant total de 948 378 € n'a pas été payé comme il aurait dû l'être en vertu des obligations financières stipulées par l'accord de siège. Cette situation a fait encourir à l'ICCROM des dépenses totales d'environ 2,7 millions d'euros, 2,7 millions d'euros. Parallèlement, la contribution annuelle du gouvernement italien au budget de l'ICCROM s'élève à 168 264 €. Le Conseil de l'ICCROM souhaiterait attirer l'attention de tous les États membres de l'ICCROM sur le fait que l'impact résultant de plusieurs années de pression financière croissante, tel qu'évoqué ci-dessus, a entraîné une érosion graduelle de la capacité de l'organisation à mettre son programme en œuvre et eu pour conséquence indirecte de mettre à la charge d'autres États membres une contribution supérieure à leur juste quote-part des coûts opérationnels de l'organisation. Le Conseil de l'ICCROM rappelle qu'au cours de la dernière Assemblée générale en 2013, le représentant du gouvernement italien, son Excellence Mario Giro, sous-secrétaire d'État aux Affaires étrangères, a donné des assurances à l'Assemblée générale que son gouvernement résoudrait le problème en lui accordant une haute priorité. Préalablement à la 84e réunion du Conseil en novembre 2014, l'ICCROM a demandé à être informé des tout derniers développements. Le ministère des Affaires étrangères a informé le Conseil par lettre du 16 octobre 2014 qu'il avait engagé une procédure en vue d'obtenir un accord interministériel qui permettrait au gouvernement du pays hôte de préparer un projet de loi à soumettre au Parlement italien. Quelques mois plus tard, le vice-ministre des Affaires étrangères a informé le directeur général que le ministère prévoyait une issue favorable de cette procédure, mais qu'il attendait l'accord interministériel requis pour passer à l'étape suivante. À ce jour, aucune autre information n'a été reçue, en dépit des multiples tentatives faites tant par le directeur général que par le président du Conseil afin d'obtenir des nouvelles. Compte tenu de ce qui précède, le Conseil de l'ICCROM appelle les États membres réunis lors de l'Assemblée générale à user de toutes les voies diplomatiques disponibles afin de rechercher une solution appropriée avec le gouvernement italien en vue de résoudre ces problèmes. Enfin, le Conseil de l'ICCROM envisage, pour le cas où aucun accord ne serait trouvé d'ici sa prochaine 87e réunion en octobre 2016, de demander à tous les États membres de suggérer toute autre solution appropriée. En outre, le Conseil souhaite rappeler à l'Assemblée générale les résolutions dans lesquelles il a, par le passé, réitéré ses inquiétudes à propos de cette situation dans lesquelles d'autres États membres financent de facto des remboursements d'impôts des membres italiens du personnel et des dépenses afférentes aux locaux de l'ICCROM. Cette situation continue d'entraver la capacité de l'organisation à réaliser pleinement sa mission. Bien qu'il souhaite exprimer son appréciation et toute sa gratitude pour la longue et fructueuse collaboration entretenue avec notre pays hôte, qui a grandement bénéficié à la communauté internationale des États membres de l'ICCROM et a également contribué à renforcer le prestige de l'Italie en tant que leader de la conservation du patrimoine culturel dans le monde entier. Le Conseil de l'ICCROM exhorte néanmoins le gouvernement italien à honorer ses obligations financières en tant que pays hôte. D'autre part, le Conseil a engagé l'important travail de définition des orientations stratégiques de l'ICCROM qui seront présentées à l'Assemblée générale de 2017 pour être mises en œuvre à partir de 2018. À cette fin a été mis en place un groupe de travail qui a été piloté par Sharon Park, groupe de travail qui a organisé un séminaire de brainstorming ayant regroupé plus de 20 personnes. les membres du groupe de travail, les membres du secrétariat de l'ICCROM, quelques membres du secrétariat de l'ICCROM et plusieurs experts venus de différentes régions du monde. Ce séminaire s'est déroulé les 28 et 29 juillet dernier. Il a été nourri par des enquêtes préalablement conduites à la fois par le secrétariat et par le Conseil. Il a permis de faire émerger le cadre du travail restant à conduire par le Conseil que vous vous apprêtez à élire. Cette élaboration des objectifs stratégiques a également conduit le Conseil, afin de nourrir sa réflexion, à approfondir plus spécifiquement certaines activités de l'ICCROM en demandant des présentations détaillées. Et tout particulièrement pour les dernières réunions du Conseil, le projet Réorg, les suites du Forum Conservation Science, les formations proposées dans le domaine du Living Heritage ou le patrimoine en temps de conflit. De même, ainsi que Gunilla Laneshlo l'a indiqué hier au cours de son introduction, tant le principe de la discussion thématique à l'Assemblée générale que son contenu sont liés à la réflexion en cours sur les objectifs stratégiques qui devront être ceux de l'ICCROM à compter de 2018 et sont en cours de réflexion. La discussion thématique que nous vous proposons au sein de cette session de l'Assemblée générale est l'un des apports les plus visibles de ce Conseil à votre Assemblée, fondé sur l'idée que cette Assemblée générale est une chance unique de pouvoir procéder à des échanges plus approfondis avec les pays membres sur des sujets stratégiques ou d'actualité. J'espère que vous en appréciez la mise en œuvre qui va poursuivre son déroulement, en particulier au cours d'une table ronde qui aura lieu demain. Concernant les dossiers des locaux de l'ICCROM, le Conseil a continué à suivre l'avancement des travaux des nouveaux locaux, qui feront l'objet tout à l'heure d'une présentation par le directeur général. Néanmoins, le contexte concernant ces locaux est celui d'un retard pris dans les travaux. Et dans ce contexte, le Conseil a exigé une évaluation technique indépendante, précise de l'état du bâtiment actuel, de manière à vérifier si ce bâtiment est conforme aux exigences de sécurité des personnes et des biens, et en particulier les exigences communiquées par le département de la sécurité de la FAO en charge de la sécurité du personnel de l'ICCROM par mandat international. Cette évaluation technique indépendante demandée par le Conseil a permis de confirmer la stabilité du bâtiment et la sécurité du personnel et des visiteurs qui en découlent. Elle ouvre également la possibilité de réutiliser des espaces préalablement limités dans leur utilisation. D'autre part, le Conseil a suivi avec attention, comme les conseils précédents, la préparation et l'ouverture du centre Auditor de Sharjah, dont nous nous réjouissons grandement. Un rapport est présenté sur l'évolution de ce centre à chacune des sessions du Conseil. La présidente du Conseil et les membres du Conseil issus de la région ont été associés non seulement à l'ouverture du centre de Sharjah, mais aussi, tout récemment, en octobre dernier, aux travaux du comité directeur du centre. Au cours de cette réunion a été présentée la stratégie intégrée du centre Auditor, y compris la stratégie opérationnelle de ce centre qui est développée, bien évidemment, en collaboration très étroite avec le secrétariat de l'ICCROM. Enfin, le Conseil soutient la direction de l'ICCROM dans l'engagement de projets de réforme qui permettront à l'organisation de s'engager dans le prochain cycle stratégique de manière équipée et renforcée. À cet égard, vous allez entendre ce matin Madame Sophie Janowski, nouvelle directrice administrative et financière de l'organisation, et Britta Rudolph, vice-présidente du Conseil, vous présenter les bases du travail sur ces éléments de réforme. Le Conseil a décidé, lors de sa séance de novembre 2014, de prolonger le contrat du directeur général d'une durée de 2 années. Il a veillé à ce que soient précisées les procédures et le calendrier du recrutement du futur directeur général qui devra être présenté à l'Assemblée générale de 2017 et à ce que les moyens financiers nécessaires soient prévus dans le budget et programme de travail qui va vous être présenté. Tels sont, Mesdames et Messieurs, les quelques aspects du travail du Conseil que je souhaitais porter à votre connaissance. Ils vous permettent en outre de comprendre le calendrier de travail qui va être celui du Conseil que vous vous apprêtez à élire. Je souhaite remercier les États membres qui présentent des candidats au Conseil. C'est un engagement de la part des candidats, c'est aussi un engagement de la part des États, je me permets de le rappeler, à prendre en charge le financement des voyages de leurs candidats au cas où ils soient élus, pour participer aux réunions pleinement du Conseil à Rome. Je tiens à vous remercier de votre attention. J'appelle à présent Madame Sophie Janowski à présenter le rapport des réviseurs aux comptes du 1er janvier 2012 au 31 décembre 2013, ainsi que le rapport financier de l'ICCROM jusqu'au 31 décembre 2014.
Madame la Présidente, Madame la Présidente du Conseil, Monsieur le Directeur Général, bien entendu les vice-présidents et l'Assemblée, je suis ravie de vous présenter en fait le premier rapport d'audit et financier pour l'ICCROM. I will continue in English. You have the document in your binder, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but needless to say, if you have questions at the end of this presentation, I'll be happy to answer them. The one element I'd like to clarify is that your audit report covers the biennium 2012-2013, whereas the financial report that you have in your binder covers the year 2014. The auditor's report is called a special purpose statement of assets and liabilities. It's prepared for the specific purpose of reflecting the sources and application of contributions received from member states. The special purpose statement of income and expenditure for the biennium then ended on audit 2013 financial statements, together with his opinion on the financial statement, are also submitted to the Assembly of Member States of ICCROM as prescribed under Article 12.4 of the Financial Regulations. You will see, if you look at your document, the audit report, you will see that the auditors issued a clean, this is how you refer to it, a clean opinion, when he concluded, in his opinion, that the financial statements were free of material misstatement. The second document which you have in your binder is an annual financial report and the financial statements for the year 2014, so year ended 2014. As you know, we follow a biennium budget system which spans 2 consecutive calendar years from 1st of January of the first year until 31st December of the following year. The report that you have covers only 1 year of the biennium for the year ended 31st December 2014. In the report, we have tried to offer some comparison regarding the position and the performance, meaning to say the financial position and the financial performance of the organization between the year 2013 and the year 2014. We, however, have not included estimates or projection of income and expenditure for the second year of the biennium and beyond. I would like to say, however, that you have some information about projected and expenditure and income received until the 30th of September 2015 in the annual report, That's a glossy report that you have in your binder as well. But it is not formally part of the financial report. Now, discussion and analysis. The statements that you have in the financial report are preceded by a number of, by a narrative, essentially an overview of the financial statement, the financial statement highlights, the notes to the financial statement. However, the discussion and analysis is not part of ICCROM's financial statement. It should be read together with ICCROM's financial statement and table. It's meant to provide some explanations. The financial statement consists of a statement of financial position, which details the net assets and is a statement that allows you to assess the financial strengths of ICCROM and the resources which are available to support its future objectives. The statement of financial performance measures the net surplus, in this case, and we're going to look at this in a few minutes, the net deficit, which is the difference between the total revenue and the total expenses for the year. In addition, you have 14 other tables that provide some details about budgets and other financial views. Now, what are the highlights? As at 31st December 2014, the ICCROM financial statements show a deficit of 131,902 euros, with a total revenue of roughly 5.4 million euros and a total expenditure of 5.5. So you will see program and budget, the voluntary contributions, and a total, with, at the bottom right side of the table, the deficit, which is essentially a small structural deficit. I will get into some of the details later on. As regards our financial position, at the end of 2014, the organization had a cash balance of 9.3 million euros, representing almost 94% of total assets. However, it must be noted that 8.5 million of these 9.3 are classified as restricted. The total cash balance has increased compared to the balance of 9.2 million euros as at 31st December 2013, and are invested as applicable in line with ICCROM's policy on investment stated in Article 9.1 of the financial regulations. The revenue from assessed contribution for 2014 represents 67.29% of total revenue, while revenue from voluntary contributions received under external funding represents 22.6% of total revenue. 220,000 euros was received as revenue from bank interest and investment in 2014, which is an increase of 24.2% compared to 2013. And you have some of the details here. So you see we actually recorded quite a significant increase on our investments and bank interests earned in 2014. As regards the changes in expenditure, the total expenditure of the organization for 2014 was roughly 5.3 million euros, representing a decrease of 1.74% compared to 2013. The largest expense for the organization is personnel expenditure of roughly 3.6 million euros, representing 67% of total expense. Personnel expenditure has increased by 2.77%, reflecting the increase of salary of the UN salary scale. Operating expenses in 2014 were 718,000 euros, representing 13.5% of total expenses. And there was a slight increase in operating costs. This chart provides you with some information about the status of our operational reserve, which is increasing. One result of the increase stems from the arrears, the contributions from the Russian Federation. This is a chart reflecting the fluctuation of our cash flow, essentially indicating most of it indicating the payment of contributions that come at different dates during the year and the corresponding expenditure. I wanted to provide some details about the status of payment of the Russian arrears, of the arrears from the Russian Federation. To date, the organization has received $695,000 with the equivalent in euros, and is with an outstanding balance remaining of 603,000 euros to be paid over the next 18 months. This is not very pleasant to look at in the morning, but it provides you with some details. I highlighted in red some additional pressures that stem from the tax reimbursement payment, which Madame Lavandier just explained a few minutes ago, and an increase in the expenditure on the after-service medical insurance plan. I will provide some other details in a few minutes about these two items. The employee benefit liability amounts to 4.3 million euros. So this is again mainly the ASHI, the after-service health insurance liability of 2.8 million euros. The liability is calculated by an independent actuary and reflects the total future cost of ICCROM's share of health insurance premiums for both existing ICCROM's retirees and the projected number of ICCROM staff who will retire in the future. This is a liability that all UN organizations and non-UN organizations, other international organizations incur. This is a chart that will help you understand the composition of the employee benefit liability. So again, you will see that the ASHI fund takes 65% of the entire liability, the GS separation payment, etc., and the income tax reimbursement that has increased this year. This is again the position with essentially a calculation of the total assets and liability of the organization. All this is detailed in your report with some, again, 14 charts that allow you to have a detailed view on all these elements. There was a slight, well, quite an important, I would say, decrease, although we have to see what 2015, the results of 2015, which we don't have fully calculated yet, obviously, a decrease in the administrative cost recovery. And this is something that the ICCROM Secretariat will definitely monitor very closely in the coming years. If you have any questions about the report, the auditor's report or the financial report, let me know.
This is the opportunity on the agenda for an open floor discussion and questions for any part of A, B, and C. So the report of the Chairperson of Council, or the auditor's report, or the ICCROM financial report. So I open the floor for questions or comments. I'm sorry, could you raise your...
I can't
again?
see this.
Netherlands.
Thank you, Netherlands.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation up to now. I noted, of course, that you are coming back to the tax problems in on a later moment, but already I wanted to say that the Netherlands takes note with great concern that we hear that no progress has been made at all, despite all efforts made by the Director General following the declaration 2 years ago of the General Assembly that it is not acceptable that Member States pay tax reimbursements through their contribution dedicated for the activities of ICCROM. So I wanted already to express our concern about this, and we are very looking forward to your further explanation. And of course, already you urged all members of ICCROM to exert all diplomatic efforts possible. The Netherlands is more than willing, of course, to do that, but my question is also already, what more options do you see towards the solution of this problem, and what are the consequences in the long term for the economic situation for ICCROM?
As all the delegates of this assembly know, the fiscal context of the entire world has changed, and there is a much greater pressure from government to collect income taxes. The status of ICCROM are not very clear, and we're trying to clarify them. Essentially, we're trying to achieve a resolution on our tax exemption issue. At the moment, ICCROM staff who are deemed tax resident of Italy, so it's not just Italian staff, it's ICCROM staff who essentially are qualified Italian tax resident, have to pay income taxes. And the organization reimburses such taxes. Because of the changes in the fiscal landscape, more ICCROM staff have come forward with the obligation, essentially, to declare the income to the Agenzia delle Entrate, and we, according to our financial policy and staff policy, have the duty to reimburse such taxes. It is I've been here essentially pretty much less than 3 months, but I have witnessed how hard this organization is working on finding a good resolution with the Italian government. What I would like to say, though, as a financial specialist, is that the tax payment is not a threat to the organization. It's not life-threatening. Assuming we would not achieve a satisfactory resolution with the Italian government, the organization can find ways to cope. It is not my duty at this point to get into the details, because this is obviously a strategy that has to be elaborated fully in consultation with the Council, who has been fully briefed, informed with great details over the past, the beginning of this week. And we are definitely working on all kinds of scenarios possible in order to address the increasing pressure that stems from these increasing tax payments. At this point in time, I cannot tell you more. All I can say is that our office, the ICCROM Secretariat, is making all the budgetary provision to address this pressure. So we're not going to be caught by surprise. We know exactly how much we will have to pay next year. However, again, being quite positive, I am quite certain that we will find a solution with the Italian government in order to ease that pressure. So this is unfortunately all I can say to you, and I think you just have to give us a bit more time to work on the issue. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Italy.
I don't know if you hear me. Yes. Okay, I asked the possibility to speak in Italian because I know there is the translation. Con riferimento al rapporto del Presidente, dove è stata evocata nuovamente la questione del pagamento del contributo dell'Italia all'organizzazione, nonché del riconoscimento dell'esenzione fiscale ai dipendenti italiani dell'organizzazione, a nome del governo italiano desidererei fare alcune precisazioni. Come affermato già ieri dal Ministro Franceschini e dal Sottosegretario Giro, l'Italia riconosce da sempre il ruolo fondamentale delle organizzazioni internazionali, in particolare nel campo della promozione e tutela del patrimonio culturale, ed è per questa ragione che nel 1957 fummo determinati ad ospitare l'ICCROM sul nostro territorio. L'Italia, riconoscendo la grande rilevanza internazionale delle attività svolte dall'ICCROM nel campo della formazione e della tutela dei beni culturali, nonché la competenza e la passione dei funzionari che vi prestano servizio, è determinata a continuare ad ospitare l'organizzazione sul proprio territorio. Pertanto, e nonostante le inderogabili esigenze di contenimento della spesa che caratterizzano l'attuale fase del Paese, la volontà politica di concedere tale beneficio ai funzionari italiani era stata già manifestata a partire dal 2012 con l'avvio del negoziato volto ad emendare l'accordo di sede. Infatti il Ministero ha preso atto già da tempo dell'auspicio dell'ICCROM di una revisione della disciplina in materia di esenzioni fiscali, nella direzione dell'ampliamento a favore dei funzionari italiani dell'organizzazione dei benefici attualmente goduti solo dai dipendenti di nazionalità straniera, in linea con la Convenzione sui privilegi e immunità degli istituti specializzati delle Nazioni Unite del 1947. Occorre al riguardo precisare che al momento della ratifica da parte italiana della stessa Convenzione, avvenuta nell'85, il nostro Paese appose una riserva riguardante proprio la questione in parola. Di conseguenza, la concessione dell'esenzione fiscale può essere perseguita solo attraverso un emendamento espresso dell'accordo di sede, seguito da ratifica parlamentare. Dunque il negoziato, come dicevo, è stato avviato fin dal 2012, in alcuni momenti ha subito anche dei rallentamenti, purtroppo dovuti a dei contatti diretti tra l'ICCROM e le amministrazioni finanziarie italiane, che hanno in qualche modo rallentato questo iter. Ciò nonostante, la volontà politica è stata in più occasioni riconfermata, da ultimo ieri dal sottosegretario Giro, il quale ha ribadito che il concerto interministeriale è ancora in corso. E posso in questa occasione confermarvi che nei prossimi giorni la questione verrà discussa in una riunione ad alto livello tra il Ministero degli Affari Esteri e della Cooperazione Internazionale e il Ministero dell'Economia e delle Finanze. Gli sviluppi di tale riunione potranno costituire l'oggetto del tavolo di consultazione con l'ICCROM proposto sempre nella giornata di ieri dal sottosegretario agli Affari Esteri, dottor Mario Giro. Vi ringrazio.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam.
The United States?
Here we go. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Sophie, for not only for the presentation you've just done, but also for the very thorough reports that you've given us. Just a comment first before I ask a question. We'd like to thank our colleagues from Italy for the statement they just made and for the will that they've expressed to pursue at the highest levels a resolution to this issue. The question I wanted to ask has to do with the final point that you made in your presentation about the administrative recovery costs and cost recovery, excuse me, and this goes to my next point. I think we have a number of cultural heritage specialists in the room, perhaps some financial specialists also. I'm neither. And especially given the concern that you yourself raised and the figures present there, I'm aware that ICCROM does charge or is mandated to charge a certain, I believe, 10% or so of voluntary contribution costs in order to recover those. And so it's not clear where that change in the figure is coming from. Would you be able to explain a little bit what is meant by administrative cost recovery, and then in your view, what has led to that decrease? Thank you.
Administrative cost recovery is essentially, I hate to say it, but in an internal tax. It's basically 10% that's levied from every voluntary contribution and destined to support the administration of ICCROM. Naturally, when we receive a voluntary contribution, we incur costs, such as the processing of the contribution, the reporting, all the administrative processes that accompany the voluntary contribution and its administration. The decrease that you have seen on the chart is totally structural, in a sense that, let me just find it, if I can find it. Yes. You have the 2013 result here, which coincides with the end of the biennium. And you have 2014, which coincides with the beginning of a biennium, at a time where not too many voluntary contributions had already come in the organization. That explains the much lower result. But I would assume that by the time we reach 2015, we will have a similar kind of result to 2013. You see what I mean? It's just that this is the beginning of a biennium, so not too many voluntary contributions had come in. Therefore, the result on cost recovery was lower. At the same time, we have donors who try to negotiate their cost recovery, the percentage of cost recovery, downwards. ICCROM does not charge a high cost recovery. Many international organizations charge much more. The OECD, for instance, charges 15% on voluntary contributions. So we try to make sure that we receive a contribution and can use 10% of that contribution to pay all this administrative cost that needs to be paid. We might have to review the policy, but again, this decrease here is purely structural. I hope this answers your question, Rob.
Are there others that would like to make an intervention at this time? Yes, Germany?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the other risks are the contributions to the ASHI fund. Please, could you explain a little bit more the risk and the possible way ahead? Thank you.
The ASHI fund is essentially the mirror image of what in your in your country would be the social security, the health insurance system, the national health insurance system. Might not be a good comparison because a lot of, many health insurance systems particularly in Europe, are at a deficit. The United Nations, the OECD, the World Bank build a fund whereby once the employee retires, the employee will be able to receive health insurance coverage. Because many people who do not contribute to the national health insurance system while working for an international organization are not entitled to benefiting from the coverage in their country of nationality or country of residence. The ASHI fund is meant to provide that insurance to retirees. Now, I have another slide. Unfortunately, it's not integrated in this presentation because I didn't think we needed to go into the details. But I can tell you that ICCROM is doing extremely well on achieving its fund target. Compared to FAO, we are about at 59% coverage, whereas the FAO is at 28% coverage. UNHCR is at 1% coverage of its fund. So either you essentially do the pay-as-you-go system, when in fact you cover your staff as they retire, postponing the liability, or you constitute a fund. Needless to say, the auditors are very much in favor of constituting the fund. However, because of all the demographics and the fact that the fund target is calculated by actuaries, actually Hewitt in the United States, in US dollars, ICCROM suffers not only the fact that the fund increases year after year because of the demographic and the number of criteria calculated used by the actuaries, but also suffers the consequences of an exchange rate difference, which this year was about 223,000 euros. The exchange rate pressure, again, is structural. It's quite virtual. Maybe next year the exchange rate will be in our favor. But it is good policy for ICCROM to try to achieve a fully funded ASHI fund. Now, needless to say, like all the agencies of the United Nations systems, we are all trying to find ways to limit the financial impact of the ASHI fund. And I hope that next time we meet, I'll be able to present to you a plan to limit this impact. I haven't had the opportunity to work on this very much, but I will, definitely. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move to the next portion of this part of the agenda. But first, you have now heard the auditor's report and the financial report. And I'm asking if we can consider that the General Assembly adopts the financial report and the auditor's report. Are there any objections to doing so? If not, I consider this adopted. Thank you. I'm now moving to item number F, which is still part of item 16, and that's the long-term financial sustainability. I turn the floor over to Chair of Council.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Ainsi que je vous l'ai indiqué, Madame Sophie Janowski et Madame Britta Rudolph vont vous présenter les bases de ce travail en cours sur les réformes permettant de faire face aux questions de sustainabilité financière soulevées par le Conseil depuis déjà plusieurs mandats.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and good morning. We will present to you some initial thoughts on the financial sustainability of ICCROM and the pillars on which it shall perhaps be built in the future. As the Chair of Council mentioned to you this morning, a working group and an intense workshop already set the first steps for new strategic planning directions of ICCROM, and a new vision that is developed in this context. And this new vision will certainly include the ambition to transparently demonstrate results and outcomes coherently with ICCROM's strategic objectives by applying, as always, best practice, including in operations and supporting administrative processing. And these are some of the aspects we will focus on this morning. Such focus will, of course, sustain growth of the organization in an exigent donor context.
Now, I think we looked at this subject even yesterday when we were talking to our colleague from the United Nations Disaster Risk Management. We talked about the importance of showing impact. More and more donors want to see impact. They want to know what their financial contribution is achieving. So, and in addition to this, there is heightened scrutiny. The public, the taxpayers, want to know what we do with their money. So in this context, it is quite important that we understand that there needs to be a shift. We need to demonstrate impact, and we also need to make sure that we broaden our donor base. As you know, at the moment, the bulk of our resources come from the assessed contribution that you, member state, provide to ICCROM. This said, like in most UN organizations, there will be a shift where more and more the organization will have to rely on voluntary contributions to do everything it wants to do and everything you want the organization to do. Talking to Ms. Rudolph about the working group of the Council who worked on this issue, we determined that there were 4 pillars on which the financial sustainability of the organization should rest on. First and foremost, I would say, the financial and strategic planning. And as the President of Council explained to you, this is a work that's currently underway. As I just mentioned, the income diversification is important, multiplying the sources of funding, multiplying donors. A sound administration and finance is critically important in order to provide donors with the assurances that their money is used and managed properly in a transparent way, also helping us with the reporting. And ICCROM should also look at ways to do its own income generation. So when I say own income generation, I mean things such as fundraising, online fundraising, better investment policies, anything that can help ICCROM improve its income generation.
And at a time of budgetary constraints affecting the majority of the main contributors, affecting the majority of you, in fact, optimization of the use of resources and the use of operational and organizational synergies in the development of effective tools for planning and monitoring the use of resources is really essential. And hence ICCROM is striving for an organization-wide, systematic and sectoral planning framework in the context of strategic planning, which we see as an absolute requirement. In terms of the objectives that have already been formulated in this context, ICCROM aims to realize the full funding potential of all member states, increase the number of multi-year commitments with its donors, increase the proportion of unearmarked contributions, which give ICCROM more flexibility in its operation, as many of the donations we received are earmarked for specific activities, increase the proportion of in-kind support to the organization, and of course to expand its donor base.
If I may add something, one of our projects, starting actually right now, is to establish an in-kind contribution valuation policy, whereby when member states contribute in kind to our programs, we can actually have an accounting value and record that as a contribution. Now, predictability of funding is critically important to the good functioning and the health of the organization. What is important is that we improve the timeliness of payment. You see, when we have contributions that come late in the year, this puts increasing pressure on the organization. Naturally, we have our operational reserve, but it's often not enough to address all the costs that the organization has to face in implementing its program. As Ms. Rudolph just said, the increasing number of multi-year funding agreements and the proportion of unearmarked contribution is critically important as well. Currently, the organization has 7 donors providing material commitment, the most recent one obviously being the government of Sharjah contribution, which is a 5-year commitment of the government to ICCROM. Needless to say, ICCROM recognizes that some donors, because of the budgetary system, cannot provide annual agreement, multi-year agreements. Nonetheless, there is a scope for us to increase this multi-year contribution agreements. A broader donor base is essential to ICCROM. At the moment, ICCROM has 21 donors, 5 of whom are new donors. The number of donors increased from 18 in 2012 in the preceding biennium. So there is a good improvement in terms of increasing our voluntary contributions. As Ms. Rudolph said, ANEMA contribution at the moment are well under 2% of the total funding. It is our objective to increase that percentage to roughly 5 to 10%. ANEMA contributions are important to the organization. It provides flexibility. It allows us to address specific shortfalls in different budget areas. So the level at the moment is too low for effective planning and needs to be higher in the future. We talked about this already. The logistical, technical, research and human resources provided by partners is extremely important to ICCROM. And I'd like to make an appeal here. You see, secondment from personnel from your national government to ICCROM would be a very good and effective way to contribute to ICCROM in terms of resources, but also naturally a way to expand on the cooperation between your government and ICCROM. Of course, one of the most, I would say, promising aspects of sound resource mobilization policy is to look at innovative funding strategy. So we are looking for new sources. I don't know if too many of you are aware, unfortunately this computer is not connected to the internet, but since essentially the day before yesterday morning, we have an online donation system at ICCROM. So donors from all over the world can contribute to our programs. Now, these are the targets that the ICCROM Secretariat has determined as achievable in the next biennium. I am actually quite certain that we will be able to come back to you in a couple of years and show that we have achieved these targets and perhaps even more. Now, our target is a contribution from each top 30 member countries by the end of 2017. If you'd like, you can look at your annual report. There is a new table in your annual report, which wasn't in the report in the preceding biennium, which indicates which countries and which donors contribute voluntary contributions to ICCROM. So our target is to achieve a higher number of member countries contributing voluntary contributions to the organization. We would like to increase the number of donors contributing at least 200,000 euros per biennium. Currently, we only have 2. To at least 4 by the end of 2017. So these are, I would say, quite reasonable targets. We'd like to increase the number of donors contributing at least 100,000 euros, currently 2, to at least 5 by the end of 2017. And again, I invite you to look at your report, the annual report, to look at this in detail. We'd like to achieve 3% of contributions coming from the private sector and foundation sources by the end of 2017. There's a mistake here. It should be by the end of 2016 and 5% by the end of 2017. I apologize. And at least 5 government secondaries provided per annum. At the moment, we have 1 government secondary from the government of Japan and a contribution from the government of France for one of our staff members.
To also facilitate effective resource mobilization, Council supported, in addition to these targets named for the future, and in response to the request of some state parties during the past General Assemblies, a number of changes which are aimed at looking at operational strategic planning as a transformative process. And some of the key elements of this transformation process will be the move towards a result-based management approach, both in the development of future programs and budgets, as well as the reporting on activities undertaken. Coherent planning of ICCROM's delivery, which can also be based on the principles of operation control and transparency, so important for you as member states. And we likewise aim to adjust the accounting system of ICCROM to achieve full UN compliancy by utilizing IPSAS, the International Public Sector Accounting Standards.
These are some of the details that some of the projects, essentially, that we will work on to achieve the objectives that Ms. Rudolph just highlighted to you. I'm not going to get into all the details because it's quite complicated, but you will see that we need to cluster these projects around three categories: our strategic objectives, our key business drivers, and the key requirements of new systems. This will be a daunting project for the organization, but it is our hope as ICCROM Secretariat, but by the end of the next biennium, we will have achieved those targets and essentially effect the reform of ICCROM to modernize its system, to provide more transparency and more accountability to its member states, and to use its internal resources more efficiently.
In introducing result-based management standards, we are working to develop a framework which is suited to ICCROM needs, starting from the resource mobilization phase to the implementation of programs. This also requires that program structures are aligned to resource-based cost allocation, and financial documentation will be aligned to IPSAS to enable result-based spending analysis. This slide aims to give you an overview of the forthcoming steps, which were mostly highlighted in earlier parts of this presentation already, but are combined once again in one single slide. So the introduction of result-based management will be based on the identification of goals, mapping of current projects and their anticipated results, and the definition of log frames for these and new projects. The coherent planning will be based on the adaptation of these log frames at an operational level. Operations control and transparency will be guided by key requirements, varying levels of decentralization as required, and as mentioned, the IPSAS compliancy will be ensured through a revised accounting template in line with international standards and yet developed exactly to ICCROM's needs. And we want to strengthen our donor relationships through agreements, agreed upon restrictions, and enhanced donor reporting processes. At this stage, ICCROM has set these targets, but we are still together, Council and the Secretariat, in a process of identifying the modified procedures needed.
Now, effective resource mobilization has to work hand in hand with a sound communications policy and strategy. It is important that we work on our key messages consistently to support our resource mobilization effort, that ICCROM information and advocacy projects are defined and continuously updated, that we use all the online systems that we can to really implement our resource mobilization strategy. Obviously, multimedia, promotional material has to demonstrate the ICCROM added value, and this goes back to the impact, our ability to demonstrate the impact of our program. We would like to develop an events strategy. You know, we had an idea, a culture cannot wait day, to rally our donors and the greater public around our mission. The conference, the SOIMA conference, has demonstrated the huge potential, the huge fundraising potential for ICCROM. And obviously, we'd like to target and cooperate with other international organizations to promote ICCROM and do fundraising together, rally around campaigns together with other UN organizations.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. I now open it to questions or any interventions that you'd like to make at this time based on this report. United States.
Yes, Sophie and Britta, thank you so very much for this. This is very exciting. I think we're in a new era to bring ICCROM into the 21st century and to really have the transparency and the accounting. I would say that this is such an interesting document, and it's not in the materials that we have, that hopefully this will be made available to the member states who wish to have a copy of it, because it's very dense. There's a lot of really good information in there, and I think it would be helpful for people to be able to reflect back on it. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If you allow me a brief response to the comment, the reason it is not included in the material is that until the Council meeting earlier this week, most of this was work in progress and still had to be supported. So it's really more or less brand new, but I think we would be happy to make this available. Thank you.
Germany.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to underline what has been said by the previous speaker. We, Germany, very much appreciated the implementation of the IPSAS program and of these strategic objectives. So thank you very much for the work and the preparation of this decision. Thank you.
Haiti.
Merci, Madame le Président. Donc, merci pour la présentation. Donc, en vous écoutant, je me suis rendu compte que, au niveau des États membres, on a besoin de vrais spécialistes de l'ICCROM, et tout au moins en Haïti, parce que la dynamique de la réforme, donc, le rapport est excellent, mais in situ, donc, c'est pas aussi facile d'appréhender toute la dynamique, toute la machine de cette réforme. Donc, néanmoins, j'ai pu remarquer qu'il y a certains leviers qui ont été établis, et je pourrais dire d'excellents leviers en termes de propulsion pour la réforme. Mais la question, est-ce que cette réforme, c'est surtout pour garantir la stabilité financière, ou bien la durabilité financière n'implique pas une réforme beaucoup plus structurelle? Je vais prendre un exemple. Je regarde dans le statut justement de l'ICCROM, en termes de structure, on a une structure qui est relativement paraîtrait légère, donc l'Assemblée générale, le Conseil, le Secretariat. Mais au niveau des régions, donc, il n'y a rien qui, si vous voulez, qui articule les opérations ou encore les suivis de l'Assemblée générale. Donc, moi, je me pose cette question. Donc, est-ce que à ce niveau-là, il ne faudrait pas également intervenir? Donc, je n'ai pas de réponse. Mais je pense que parce que la finance en tant que telle, ça rentre dans les objectifs d'activité. Donc, or, si l'ICCROM, c'est une organisation mondiale multilatérale, donc, dans ce cas-là, donc, la réforme implique également l'aspect structurel. Quand je parle de structure, donc, comme c'est noté dans le statut. La deuxième remarque, bien, ma deuxième remarque, c'est par rapport aux différents rapports. En arrivant ici, donc, on a reçu un lot de documents, etc. Et il y a une intervention, une collègue qui a fait la même intervention. Donc, et moi, j'aurais proposé peut-être que 2 mois ou 3 mois, en fait, néanmoins 2 mois peut-être, avant les assemblées, si on peut avoir les documents. Parce que c'est pas, encore une fois, si on recherche l'efficacité dans les débats, si on recherche justement l'efficacité dans cette dynamique de réforme, les États membres doivent être informés un peu plus tôt tantôt, pas de l'Assemblée générale seulement, mais également des documents. Parce qu'il y a beaucoup de trucs financiers et autres, donc qu'on arrive à digérer tantôt, mais pas forcément tout le monde, si vous voulez. Merci.
intervention. Je crois que vous avez soulevé des points très importants. L'un des éléments est la manière dont nous pouvons effectivement diffuser l'information sur tous nos efforts de réforme. Il y a des plateformes Internet, électroniques, que nous pouvons construire et nous avons l'objectif de les construire afin de vous tenir informés de ce projet qui est finalement extrêmement intéressant, très motivant, non seulement pour le Conseil, l'Assemblée générale et l'ICCROM, mais pour l'ensemble du public d'une manière générale. Il est important que vraiment les personnes qui contribuent, on appelle les taxpayers, qui contribuent au budget de l'ICCROM, puissent voir que l'ICCROM est engagé dans un processus de réforme. Donc, je m'engage au nom de l'ICCROM, du secrétariat de l'ICCROM, à pouvoir créer justement ces plateformes Internet de façon à tenir l'ensemble de la communauté des membres de l'ICCROM informés des progrès que nous ferons durant les prochaines 2 années. Concernant les systèmes de gestion et en particulier la stratégie financière, il est évident que l'introduction de normes comptables telles que l'IPSAS correspond à une réforme qui est une réforme globale. L'ensemble des organisations internationales adhèrent, enfin la plupart maintenant adhèrent à l'IPSAS. Je peux vous dire qu'à Rome, nous sommes pratiquement la dernière organisation internationale qui n'a pas adhéré au système de l'IPSAS. Donc ça vient. Par contre, ce qui est important de comprendre et de répéter, c'est que l'IPSAS ne peut pas être mis en œuvre tout seul. Il faut pouvoir accompagner ce changement dans les normes comptables que suit l'organisation par une revue complète des systèmes d'information, des systèmes financiers et comptables, des procédures, des politiques d'investissement, de la politique de reporting, parce que l'IPSAS change complètement la vue. Enfin, la présentation des comptes, elle est beaucoup plus transparente, elle est beaucoup plus dynamique, mais elle demande aussi une remise en question de tous nos outils. Et la difficulté pour le secrétariat va être de suivre les stratégies qui sont évidemment construites avec l'Assemblée générale, avec le Conseil, mais d'opérationnaliser ces stratégies. Et c'est un travail extrêmement difficile. Notre tâche, c'est de présenter un plan, donc un Change Management Plan, un plan de gestion du changement qui va comprendre tous ces aspects. Donc, quand nous regardons, vous parliez, je crois, de système de gouvernance, n'est-ce pas, si j'ai bien compris, de l'organisation. Ça, c'est un objectif que le Conseil s'est également fixé, qui est important, vous avez parfaitement raison, et qui va s'ajouter au processus de planification du changement que nous allons élaborer ensemble. J'espère avoir répondu à votre question.
Burkina Faso.
Oui. Voilà. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Merci aux exposants de tout à l'heure pour nous avoir rassurés par rapport à l'avenir financier de l'ICCROM. J'ai juste quelques observations à faire, 2 précisément. La première observation par rapport au sujet même qui parle de durabilité financière à long terme, c'est que à l'exposé, j'ai compris qu'il y a une planification jusqu'autour de 2017. Mais le long terme, à mon avis, c'est beaucoup plus que ça. Donc, j'aimerais savoir quelle est l'échéance qui a été fixée véritablement par rapport à cette planification. Et en second lieu, et me référant à ce que mon prédécesseur vient de dire tout à l'heure, j'aimerais savoir comment est-ce que ce plan stratégique de long terme va pouvoir être validé. Est-ce qu'il va être validé? S'il va être validé, qui va le valider et quand est-ce qu'il va être validé? Je vous remercie.
Merci Burkina Faso pour cette intervention très légitime. Il me paraît important de pouvoir présenter un sujet qui, encore une fois, est le résultat d'un travail fait avec le Conseil, dans une vision, j'allais dire, globale. On il est important de pouvoir motiver les pays membres sur le fait que l'ICCROM, le secrétariat de l'ICCROM, a déterminé certains objectifs de mobilisation des ressources pour les 2 prochaines années à venir. Quand je suis arrivée à l'ICCROM, j'ai tout de suite parlé de ces questions avec non seulement le directeur général, mais également les membres du Conseil. Il m'est apparu très important que nous ayons une compréhension commune de la nécessité d'avoir ce qu'on appelle en anglais des quick fixes. Okay? C'est-à-dire des choses qui vous permettent d'avoir des résultats immédiats de façon à montrer que la stratégie, il y a une stratégie à long terme en effet, mais il y a aussi une stratégie à court terme qui permet de pouvoir justement comprendre la mécanique derrière la mobilisation des ressources pour l'ICCROM, qui est complètement différente pour toute autre organisation, de par le fait que l'organisation est petite, mais qu'elle dépend de très nombreux partenaires qui, eux, sont même très engagés dans la mobilisation des ressources. Il ne s'agit pas donc de leur prendre leurs ressources pour nous les attribuer. Il s'agit de développer une stratégie qui soit une stratégie concertée avec nos partenaires. Et ça me paraît très important de maintenir cette concertation, donc de ne pas entrer en concurrence avec notre partenaire. Le positionnement dans la stratégie des mobilisations de ressources est un élément clé. En ce qui concerne la stratégie financière à long terme, c'est autre chose. C'est quelque chose, je dirais, beaucoup plus back-office. Mais c'est extrêmement important. Une stratégie financière doit s'établir sur des années. Mais elle doit aussi garder la vision de l'année en cours, des 2 années en cours, du biennium, donc du cycle de programme de l'ICCROM, et du cadre stratégique à long terme de 6 ans, et bien au-delà. Nous avons une responsabilité fiduciaire vis-à-vis des membres de l'Assemblée générale, de nos pays membres, de maintenir une organisation saine, de maintenir des investissements qui produisent des retours importants, et donc d'être le garant de cette stratégie. Elle n'est pas encore complètement définie, mais il y a quelque chose qui est très important, il y a une coopération extrêmement claire, extrêmement motivante, extrêmement, j'allais dire, stratégique entre le Conseil qui vous représente et le secrétariat, et bien sûr les opportunités que nous aurons de vous présenter ces stratégies et d'obtenir votre retour. Voilà.
Thank you very much to Ms. Rudolph and to Ms. Janowski. We're going to now move to the next part of the agenda. Thank you. I'd now turn to item 16G, and that is the status of ICCROM's premises, and I turn the podium over to our Director General.
As you know, the issue of the premises could be divided into sub-issues. The first one is the new premises. In 2012, in 2011, we received the declaration that Italy gave by decree of the Direzione Regionale del Lazio, who was the relevant office for this issue, a new headquarters to ICCROM because of the general problem of stability of the building. One part, 1/3 of the current building was evacuated because of the problem of stability, and also for the need of the Ministry of Cultural Heritage to reorganize the whole block of the San Michele for their functions. The new premises, located in the old monastery of San Francesco a Ripa, have been divided in 3 lots. One already occupied by the Carabinieri, so the corps of the Italian police army dedicated to control cultural heritage, of the illicit traffic and smuggling of cultural heritage. The second one is still the monastery of the Franciscan order. The third one, just in front of Porta Portese, has been given to ICCROM. Of course, being an old monastery, transformed in a caserne of bersaglieri and after in other military orders, it needed the restorations, and this restoration were initiated by the ministries already before, with the strengthening of the buildings, etc. After the allotment, after the assignation to Italy, their restoration have been dedicated to our move from the ongoing premises to the new one. The budget, more or less, of the executed works is, we have not a control, we have not, we look at declaration of the ministry, are more or less about 6 million euro already spent. To have an idea of the need, financial need to complete the work, it seems that it is between the 2 and 3 million euro still needed, including or not. We have no, because there is also the question of the tender. There are many technicalities connected, but we will see. Until the last General Assembly, the works proceeded according to the plan. But when we have seen in the last General Assembly, we have seen a delay, a retard, how to say, in the works. Therefore, we asked the news, and the last slot of works to be realized was suspended because of a financial lack. We were informed by the office which has succeeded to the Direzione Regionale, which is the Secretary General. We have had the transformation in the organization of the Ministry of the Culture with different responsibilities, etc. But the office competent for the time informed us that the following slot of works could not be implemented because of lack of funds, of funding for this particular issue. Therefore, we asked the meeting, and we had the meeting on 30th of April 2015 in the General Secretariat of the Ministry of Cultural Heritage. And after this long discussion, because it was involved this problem and the problem of the maintenance cost of the current premises and other issues, etc., always connected with the premises. By the hand, we have been informed that after the meeting of the end of April 2015, in September, 9 September 2015, the Secretary General informed us that the Ministry verified the coherence of a lot of intervention minimum of 2.5 million euro as the next slot. Recently, we have been informed that the minimum has increased of 800,000 euros more, which completes, according to the President figures, the financial need. And we have been informed that by the prevision of the conclusion of the works is by the end of 2017. So we will have a delay according to our prevision of move, but that's fine. That's fine also because on the other issue, so the stability of the current premises, which was one of the reasons to push us to ask about, because we are in a building which has often show cracks in the facade. We have abandoned 1/3. Years ago, the adhering building collapsed in the night. So it's a situation which is not giving you a lot of tranquility. But the recent, we have followed the situation of the stability through many monitoring, to many consultations. We had the first one in 2014. There were before under my predecessor. We had a consultation with the Provveditorato of Public Works, another assessment by National Council of Research, with which we have an agreement of cooperation. By the hand, we decided, and the monitoring is included as a part of the funds for the new premises. In the discussion in April with the ministry, we discussed also how to include the monitoring of the current premises in the new funds. We had an evaluation by an independent consultant, so it is not the Ministry of Public Works, but is the private company which has made the evaluation of stability of the wall block of the San Michele. We are just occupying the last block of a long buildings, and the ministry on his side assigned to this company the evaluation of all the buildings, so they know very well the kind of constructions, the foundations, they know the subsoil, the geological situation, etc. And according to their evaluation, it seems that there is no problem of stability for the blocks. We are on geological layers which are impregnated of water, but the muds are stabilizing. So the cracks are due to the stabilization, to the hardening of the soils, but there is no risk for collapsing. The risks, the major risks were the one on the vaults of the first story, of the first level, which were abandoned by us 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and we have no activities over them. They are also the historical part of the building. The upper part has been reconstructed in concrete in the last century. So, but the vaults are still the 18th century vaults, and therefore they should be restored, but not by ICCROM, but by the ministry when they will take our place in the building. So they gave also us the evaluation that both the part that we are occupying and the part which we have abandoned for precaution could be used, pending not to put on them a load more than 200 kilos per square meters, which is good for offices, naturally not for an archive or a library or something like this, but it's fine for us to work in a sufficient way, in a satisfactory way, until the works of the new premises are concluded. That's all.
Thank you very much. I now open the floor for any discussion or questions on this. Italy.
Good morning. Thank you. Dear President, distinguished guests, dear General Director, I would like to speak in Italian because there are very technical issues. Thanks. Allora, il Ministero della Cultura italiano è in stretto collegamento con il Ministero degli Affari Esteri, come più volte sottolineato anche nella giornata di ieri, è lieto di confermare piena ospitalità alla sede dell'ICCROM a Roma e quindi è anche fermamente impegnato a dare delle risposte positive ai fabbisogni dell'ICCROM che sono già stati discussi nelle sedi di confronto anche recente, come ha ricordato il direttore generale De Caro. Dunque l'azione del Ministero del Ministero dei Beni Culturali in particolare è volta a sostenere l'ICCROM dunque su più questioni anche di carattere operativo. Ora ci riferiamo al tema della sede. Come ricordato, il Ministero dei Beni Culturali per la nuova sede assegnata all'ICCROM nell'ambito del convento di San Francesco a Ripa ha già investito oltre 6 milioni di euro, specificamente 6 milioni 318 mila euro, e i lavori sono in corso fin dal 2007 con tutte quelle complessità che sono proprie di interventi di restauro in un edificio antico, quindi con anche degli elementi che sono in corso d'opera si determinano come problemi di carattere strutturale, carattere statico, carattere tecnico-scientifico in generale. Quindi i tempi di restauro naturalmente non sono stati e non saranno ancora brevissimi, ma sono naturalmente in corso. E fin dall'aprile 2015, come ha ricordato il professor De Caro, con una riunione di coordinamento sono stati quantificati insieme alle strutture che nel Ministero seguono il restauro di questo importante edificio. La cifra ancora necessaria è stata quantificata in 2 milioni e 500 mila euro, risorse molto ingenti che però il Ministero dei Beni e delle Attività Culturali ha messo a disposizione specificamente per questo, per raggiungere questo specifico risultato. Quindi è una somma che è stata individuata dal Ministero dei Beni e delle Attività Culturali e che è stata inserita in un recente provvedimento normativo, quindi una disponibilità specifica finanziaria che il Ministero ha individuato proprio per far fronte a un'esigenza straordinaria. Questo finanziamento verrà reso disponibile già a gennaio del prossimo anno, quindi già nel gennaio del prossimo anno si potrà avviare la progettazione esecutiva e si daranno avvio a tutte le procedure di gara per rendere operativa la spesa e quindi conseguentemente i lavori per la sede. Allora possiamo indicare orientativamente nel luglio 2016 l'avvio delle procedure dei lavori ed è presumibile, da quanto ci riferiscono i tecnici, che possa essere fissata entro il 2017 la conclusione dei lavori che saranno avviati nel corso del 2016. Questo per quanto riguarda la sede del Ministero. Nel frattempo mi fa piacere segnalare che è stato anche approvato un ulteriore finanziamento di 800 mila euro per le spese ulteriori necessarie a ICCROM per assicurare anche il trasloco dalla sede attuale alla sede futura. Quindi questo è un ulteriore finanziamento messo a disposizione del Ministero. Tra l'altro, se ci fossero interventi urgenti che si dovessero rendere necessari nella sede attuale, perché naturalmente presenta alcune criticità, ma è evidente che lo sforzo del Ministero viene fatto proprio per assicurare a ICCROM una sede prestigiosa e adeguata alle esigenze dell'istituzione. Comunque il Ministero naturalmente avrà attenzione anche a rendere disponibili quelle esigenze più immediate per la sede precedente. Vorrei dire due parole sul contributo per il funzionamento che mette a disposizione il Ministero dei Beni e delle Attività Culturali, che è un contributo, vorrei chiarire, che è aggiuntivo rispetto a quello che già viene assicurato attraverso la quota che il Ministero degli Affari Esteri eroga in qualità di Stato membro dell'Italia. Allora, il Ministero dei Beni Culturali fin dal 2004 ha assicurato un contributo di circa 100.000 euro, 108.000 euro. A questo contributo negli anni successivi non è stato più sufficiente a coprire le spese che sono state maturate nel frattempo da ICCROM in termini di gestione della sede, e quindi questo ha portato, come è stato forse anche illustrato, a accumulare un deficit su questa tipologia di spesa. Il deficit complessivo ammonta a circa 850.000 euro. Allora, il Ministero dei Beni e delle Attività Culturali naturalmente, come tutte le amministrazioni pubbliche, ha serie criticità rispetto all'erogazione di finanziamenti per le proprie spese, ma ha comunque chiesto, attraverso la nuova legge di stabilità, l'incremento del capitolo di bilancio presso il quale sono depositate queste risorse che devono assicurare il funzionamento. In questo ambito intende fissare anche, nei limiti del possibile, un aumento del contributo annuale, insieme a un possibile contributo straordinario per il deficit pregresso. E quindi questo è un impegno che il Ministero sta assumendo e che sarà quantificato all'inizio del prossimo anno. Il Ministero comunque, e questo mi fa piacere anche risottolinearlo, sempre nello spirito della più ampia e piena collaborazione, è pronto a prendere parte al tavolo tecnico che è stato già proposto dal Ministero degli Affari Esteri e della Cooperazione Internazionale per la soluzione delle diverse questioni aperte alle quali avremo naturalmente piena piacere e interesse a portare avanti nelle soluzioni più positive. Grazie.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Are there any further interventions on this subject before we close? Germany?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank Italy for the explanation and additional information. I have just one question, please. Could you give information about the impacts on the budget of ICCROM caused by the pending move to the new premises, and are additional measures necessary?
C'est plus ou moins... donc nous recevons, si je ne me trompe pas, moins que 150 000 euros. Récemment, ça a été augmenté de 5 000 euros. Et face à une nécessité de 250 000, plus ou moins, 240 000, 250 000. Donc il y a pour le moment 130 000. Mais là, vous voyez, si je peux me permettre, c'est une histoire qui s'est déroulée au fil du temps, hein, parce que la maintenance du siège dans le passé, c'était alloqué près du ministère des Affaires étrangères. C'est à un certain moment que le ministère des Affaires étrangères et le ministère de la Culture, ils ont décidé de transformer cette allocation, qui était originairement une allocation de fonds, dans une allocation de ressources en kind. Donc c'était du personnel du ministère qui faisait le service de garde et le service de maintenance, de nettoyage du siège. À un certain moment, puisque les gardiens du ministère ont commencé à diminuer, alors on a décidé, en restant comme allocation du besoin chez le ministère des Affaires culturelles, de retransformer ça en fonds. Mais en plaçant ce fonds sur un chapitre, sur une ligne budgétaire qui est destinée aux bibliothèques, aux archives et aux institutions culturelles. Donc c'est l'institution culturelle ICCROM, mais là il n'y a pas de différence entre les institutions culturelles nationales et les institutions culturelles internationales. Ça signifie que la bibliothèque d'une ville italienne reçoit des fonds au même titre que l'ICCROM. Donc lorsqu'il y a chaque année, pendant les 15 années dont je me souviens, des spending reviews, on a toujours coupé de façon linéaire sur les expenditures. Et donc, la chiffre qui au début était suffisante, d'un côté, les coûts sont augmentés. De l'autre côté, les allocations de fonds ont été rasées année après année, et donc à la fin, on est arrivé à un déficit. Nous avons couvert le déficit par le budget compulsif de l'organisation, mais on a tenu bien compte des arriérés, de ce qu'il fallait. Évidemment, c'est un sujet intéressant au plan de la stabilité, dans le sens qu'il faudra évaluer combien le nouveau bâtiment, ça va coûter en termes de maintenance. Et c'est une partie de la future maintenance de la siège, des coûts de maintenance de la siège, combien ça va coûter, puisque ça va être chargé sur l'Italie. Je ne sais pas si, je crois que plus ou moins on ira, mais c'est une chose, c'est entretenir un couvent, autre chose c'est entretenir des offices. Donc ça peut être un peu différent, les toits ne sont pas les mêmes, mais ça c'est un problème d'évaluation technique qu'il faudra faire. Au moment où on nous consignera le siège nouveau, il faudra aussi que cette consigne soit accompagnée par une évaluation des coûts de maintenance, de façon qu'on puisse savoir exactement, soit dans l'intérêt du ministère, soit dans l'intérêt de l'ICCROM, de quel chiffre on parle. Tu as ajouté quelque chose?
Ms. Janowski.
Monsieur le Directeur général, il est en effet certain que les coûts de maintenance comprennent, tels qu'ils sont définis déjà maintenant, comprennent certains aspects qui couvrent l'occupation des bureaux actuels en tant que bureaux. Par exemple, le gouvernement italien est responsable de l'infrastructure concernant les ordinateurs, le câblage, des choses comme ça. Toutes ces dépenses n'étaient pas prévues. Toutes ces dépenses, par exemple, si nous devions changer le système de câblage du bâtiment actuel, il y a un investissement d'environ 130 000 €. On ne va pas le faire parce que nous sommes censés déménager incessamment sous peu.
Switzerland.
Merci. J'aimerais moi aussi remercier l'Italie e lo vorrei fare anch'io in italiano per rendere onore alla nostra lingua comune. Dunque dobbiamo essere riconoscenti, credo, del grande sostegno che l'Italia produce per l'ICCROM per creare possibilità e una situazione di lavoro ideale per l'organizzazione. Certo ci sono difficoltà amministrative, ci sono difficoltà finanziarie che devono essere superate e magari avremmo voluto vedere superate queste difficoltà un po' più velocemente. Adesso credo però che non ci sono dubbi della grande volontà dell'Italia di continuare con questo sostegno, di aumentare pure, come l'abbiamo sentito, questo sostegno e per questo vorrei ringraziare tanto, anche sperando che magari il movimento si accelera un pochino quest'anno e quest'anno fino alla prossima Assemblea Generale.
Algeria.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Moi, je voudrais simplement exprimer un sentiment dans l'éventualité du déménagement vers les nouveaux locaux. Quel serait le devenir des locaux actuels qui, en capitalisant en fait une très forte charge mémorielle, donc qui
qui sont en fait un véritable monument historique de la conservation et de la restauration. Donc, quelle que soit l'utilisation future de ces locaux, il serait intéressant de marquer, donc, peut-être par le classement de ce monument historique au titre de la conservation et de la restauration. Merci.
Ce n'est pas la première fois que l'ICCROM déménage. C'est-à-dire que l'évier, il se rappelle du bâtiment à Via Cavour, qui était la première siège de l'ICCROM, puisque l'ICCROM a toujours suivi le destin de l'Istituto Centrale del Restauro. Lorsque l'Istituto Centrale del Restauro il était là, nous étions près de là, et mes prédécesseurs ils montraient les diapos de ce bâtiment que personne de nous, maintenant qu'on ne connaît plus. C'est dans la mémoire, c'est dans les archives. Et lorsque l'Istituto Centrale il a déménagé et est arrivé ici, aussi pour l'Istituto, ce fut très dur. Je me souviens, il y a eu des batailles, des longues batailles pour garder la mémoire du vieux bâtiment, mais ça a été fait quand même. Et nous avons déménagé près de l'Istituto. Et le nouveau bâtiment qu'on nous assigne, c'est juste en face de l'Istituto. Et Monsieur le ministre Franceschini venait hier de me dire qu'il faudrait renforcer encore plus la coopération entre ce que fait l'Istituto, qui a usé de faire des cours internationaux très liés avec celle de l'ICCROM et ce que fait l'ICCROM. Donc je crois que cet rapprochement va être très utile. Le bâtiment où nous sommes logés restera dans le domaine du ministère. Il y a une partie du bâtiment, une partie de nos locations actuelles, que c'est le laboratoire de chimie et c'est le bloc des archives, le bloc basse, celui qui est à l'entrée avant le couloir. Là, il faudra en parler un peu avec le ministère, c'est-à-dire que nous nous déménagerons de ce bâtiment-là. Il faudra voir sur le plan, avec le Conseil, sur le plan de la faisabilité du travail jour par jour, s'il est soutenable de conserver un laboratoire chimique qui est distant de 150 mètres de l'actuel. Comment intégrer de quelque façon, puisque reconstruire un laboratoire chimique, c'est un coût. C'est vrai que nous ne faisons maintenant plus le travail qu'on faisait lorsque le laboratoire a été bâti, mais on fait encore des choses, et c'est une partie importante de la mémoire. Il faut le voir dans le contexte aussi des nouveaux programmes, je crois. Mais en tout cas, je suis sûr que le ministère italien va garder une destination publique. Il y a aussi, nous avons dans nos archives des peintures murales qui ont été faites par les vieux partenaires, les vieux trainees des cours de peinture murale, qui sont vraiment presque des œuvres d'art contemporaines, mais elles sont.
Thank you. We will close this item of the agenda. This is actually the time when we would break for coffee. However, I've been requested by the delegation from Brazil. They would like to make an intervention at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for this morning presentation. I'd like to apologize for bringing back an issue already discussed yesterday regarding the acceptance of the candidatures to the Council. However, based on a request received last night from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, we'd like to ask the General Assembly to kindly reconsider the decision of the Candidature Committee by accepting the late candidatures presented, including the Brazilian one, as it has already happened in previous occasions. Thank you.
Just to remind everyone of the Assembly, I'm going to reread 60.3. Candidatures shall be forwarded to the Director General as far in advance of the General Assembly as possible. candidatures shall be received by the Director General at least 15 days before the date fixed for the first meeting of the General Assembly. Any candidatures received less than 15 days before the latter date shall be considered invalid. Yesterday, the Committee of Candidatures completed its evaluation and it presented to Council the results of this. In order to reconsider, you must go to Rule 45 of our Rules of Procedure, and I will read this to you also. Reconsideration of a proposal. When a proposal has been adopted, which it was yesterday, it may not be reconsidered at the same session unless the General Assembly so decides by 2/3 majority of the member states present and voting. I can't make this decision. It's the will of the Assembly. Therefore, in order to reopen the work of the Candidatures Committee, a full vote would have to be taken at this time, and I would like to know your will on this. Yes, in other words, we could take a vote. It would take a full vote. We would need to use these, and it would have to be a clear 2/3 majority to open this. In order for us to complete this and move on in the agenda, we need to take a yes. Germany, you'd like to speak?
You repeat the question
Okay.
for which we are going to vote.
In order to reopen the work of the Candidatures Committee to consider the request of Brazil, and perhaps there are others that I'm not aware of at this point, the committee completed its work based on the rules of procedure. They were followed, and all of us were in the room when it was presented and approved. In order to go back and take something that we've approved already and adopted, you have to open up a vote officially, and there must be a 2/3 majority to do so, to reopen it again, and the work of the committee would restart again. Okay? Am I correct, Mr. Pucci? I am correct, thank you. So, are the technical people ready for this vote? Because I don't know, we haven't used it since yesterday. Are we ready? Yes?
A clear announcement of the question.
Mr. Pucci, I'll let him clarify so he can use his legal terms to explain.
So, can you hear me? So the question here is that, as you may remember, yesterday the General Assembly approved the report of the committee. Therefore, the issues was closed. Now the question is that this issue should be, we have a request to reopen the issue, so to reconsider a proposal which was already adopted. In order to do so, you need the 2/3 majority of the member states present and voting. So the question that you are now voting is, are you in agreement to reopen the issue of the candidatures to the Council? That's the question on which you have to vote. Let's say that 2/3 majority say yes. At that point, you need another vote, because as the chairperson read the provision, candidatures which were received less than 15 years before are null and void, are invalid. Therefore, in order to make them valid, you have to vote again, and again there will be a vote of 2/3 majority. So the first one, the one that you have now, is to reconsider the issue of the candidatures, whether the General Assembly agrees to reopen the issue. Am I being clear?
Thank you. So are we ready with the technical aspect of this? Can someone wave and say yes to me? Yes, are we ready? Are we ready to vote? Now, let's explain this again, in case you missed this yesterday. You have this. It's the official delegate will vote. You have three choices. The green button is yes. The yellow button is you're abstaining, and the red button is no. So here it is, and I'd like you now to vote, please. I'm about to call it, so I hope all of you have had the opportunity to register your vote, because I'm now closing the vote. Okay? That is the will of the Assembly, and I am closing the session because the vote has been completed. And that we are now going to move on to the coffee break. First of all, I have a thank you I want to make at this time before we leave, and that is yesterday the Republic of Korea was so kind as to host us for the coffee break, and today the United Arab Emirates is hosting the coffee break this morning. So I'm very thankful, and I'm sure all of the delegates here are today. Pardon me, there's a question on the floor before we break. Yes, Guatemala.
If you can just project the results again, please.
Yes, the results will be projected, and I would ask that all of you return at 11:30.
Thank you.
11:30.
When you lose them.
Could I ask delegates to please take their seats so we can begin the agenda? Thank you all very much. We will now begin the agenda. Item number 17, which is the report on the implementation of the program for 2014-2015. To do so, I will ask the Director General to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Even though it is not an activity in the traditional way, One of the most important events in this last biennium was certainly, as you have seen, the appointment of the new Finance and Administration Manager that was decided last year to replace Mr. Bruno Pisani, who served the administration with the organization for over 10 years as consultant. The vacancy announcement for the position was issued on November 2014. As the long-term sustainability of the organization seemed to require a stronger action of fundraising and of research of extraordinary contributions, the main requirement and qualifications for the new staff member should therefore include a substantial experience in fundraising, beside the ones needed for the administrative and human resource management. The procedure of selection was very interesting, with a considerable number of applications received, a good indicator of the credibility of our organization. The conclusion of the procedure brought to the appointment on 1st of September 2015 of Madam Sophie Janowski, Canadian, with a large experience in administration of international organization, with the new title of Chief Management Officer. The change of this title reflects also the new task that she was given to study, and you have seen that she has started, in view of the financial sustainability of the organization, eventual needed updating of our profile and structure. These remained for a long time in some way not clearly defined in the framework of the organization of the international institutions. We are not a United Nations agency like our mother UNESCO, even though we comply with its ethics and most of the procedures and the obligations. Neither a light organization acting with the flexibility of other subjects when searching for funds on the international scenario, where training in conservation of cultural heritage has become a competitive field. This undefined profile is today an handicap in front of many national and international private and public organizations and institutions benefiting of the many special dedicated programs and the rules unfortunately not applicable to ICCROM. Therefore, we have to work to highlight better, in a better way, our strong points, like our reliability in terms of quality of our programs, of our ethics, of the values of the intercultural dialogue, of respect for cultural diversity, for the communities, etc., in order to be considered for direct allocation of funds under national budgets or private foundations. If the international community wishes that we remain a sound intergovernmental body, and the presence yesterday and today of so many delegations is a good sign in this sense, then our neutral character should be rewarded with a special position in the operational possibilities, like other bigger organizations. This is the reason why we return to discuss with the European Commission to be recognized as a direct partner for developing programs supported by the European Union through a financial administrative framework agreement of the same kind that other organizations enjoy. This is particularly relevant in front of the European Commission. One of the reasons why we invited Mrs. Costa was also this one. The European Commission has renewed a strategy to include cultural heritage as one of the priorities of the new work plan for culture 2015-2019. We could, as it happened years ago, still develop important programs inside Europe or between Europe and other continents, like in the year of the first program for the Arab region, the NAMEC, whose consequences you have seen in the Qatar, or the PREMA program for Africa. And many of the people of today from Africa are originated from the PREMA activities. Not just responding to crises, but helping to prevent them by sustaining development by heritage. Our aim is to have the recognition that we have already from individual countries by multinational regional organizations like European Union or like other continental organizations in order to better use our intergovernmental profile. Coming to our activities per program, To save your time while leaving space to the presentation by the staff of ICCROM, I will address only some key examples of some key ideas inspiring our program. The first one is that the usual agenda of ICCROM as an international center for the study of preservation and restoration has been completely reshaped in its priorities by the recurrent dramatic events and aggressions on cultural heritage, to the conflict and natural hazards. Of course, we have been still able to implement our regular programs, so STONE, Reorg, Summer School, etc., which for decades have formed the strength of our organization and the network of professionals ensuring our capacity to provide high-quality training in the most of the world. But the recurrent dramatic events and the aggressions against cultural heritage have created additional critical challenges to ICCROM's work. We have been working hard to meet those challenges and to develop and partner in activities to help our member states to respond to these situations. The second idea is that our typical working feature is partnership. We work since many years, maybe since ever, I would say it's definitely since ever, much beyond the simple capacity of our staff, today counting 34 people. In fact, we focus in designing the programs, but they are implemented not only by us, but in the most part of them, by a number of partners. Here there are some of the most important: UNESCO, of course, ICOMOS, IUCN, new ones like ICOM, that was absent in the Council, but it will be an important partner. But all around the world, we have, together with governments, a network of other partnerships, universities, research centers, museums, NGOs, single professionals working with us and sharing our values. Of course, even to implement cooperation, to monitor and report on projects developed with partners, we would need some more staff. I don't think that ICCROM should never become an organization with a large staff, but even just to design projects responding at least to the main request of our 134 member states, we should have maybe the double of the resource persons that we have now. Don't forget that years ago, not so many years ago, with a largely lesser number of countries, ICCROM could count on about 50 persons. How to recruit them without affecting the finance of our organization will be the task of Mrs. Janowski in the next years, and mine, at least for the next biennium, not more than the next biennium, I do. Partnership is not only a financial constraint, but a way of working and a philosophy for ICCROM. This biennium was an opportunity to see that it is the only way to do meaningful programs and work. We have seen in the case of Reorg, in case of our intervention in Nepal, for the SOIMA programs. Partnership means many things. It means professional collaboration, financial collaboration, in-kind collaboration, etc. I could not name here all our partners, and you will find a complete list in the written report, but I want at least to highlight some. Not only voluntary contributions, but also the other ways of support from member states, which has provided benefit to the entire ICCROM community. So, by instance, the fund established by the program with the State Agency of Cultural Heritage of China has provided the 50% of the grants that ICCROM gave over the 2 years. The Memorandum of Understanding with Korea has ensured the development of regional programs in Southeast Asia, the CollAsia and the Asia Forum. On his side, and I apologize with Mexico for having just jumped in the written report the contribution, the important contribution about Mexico, but we will amend in the website with an amendment. Mexico has mirrored many ICCROM's activities to serve the Latin America region. I would mention again the collaboration with the IUCN in the People-Centered Approach course, the Prince Claus Foundation that worked with us in Nepal earthquake mission, and many other issues. The Norway for the wood course The Swiss government, who has partnered with us on World Heritage Capacity Building, the Getty Conservation Institute on Stone Course, Ritsumeikan University, the ACCU, ICOMOS, and especially the ICORP, the Committee for Disaster Risk Committee of ICOMOS, the Japanese government for the Sendai meetings, and I could consider for many, many, many lines. But you can find all the list of our partners, and certainly the staff members will mention better than me. Now, my idea is that we work with others. We could not do nothing practically, instead a dream. But to become that dreams become reality, we have to work with others. The third idea is communication. This has been a biennium where we have seen the need to strengthen communication power, the need to put more resources in disseminating our work and in sharing the values of ICCROM. The figures of the people connected through social media, there are 100,000 in few days, in few hours, hundreds of thousands, show the popularity of this media as means of reaching out. But in front of better equipped organization, we are just at the beginning, and we need to find ways to continue to get our message out to a wider audience. The fourth idea is knowledge management. Dissemination of information is essential for an organization like ours. It was in the beginning, in the very statutory charter of our organization, the dissemination of information. In a world where more and more scientific information is available only by paying, you will see that there are a lot of organizations that provide scientific information, but you have to pay. Without criticizing this option, that is certainly a way to sustain efficiently the cost of the research. The research has a cost, and so someone has to pay, and so it's normal that. But on the other side, the open access to information needed for the conservation of heritage is a choice that many organizations of our kind that share our values must do. We are on this line, digitizing and disseminating for free the content of our large library, obviously the part not covered by copyrights, participating in projects of collecting and making available scientific data. I stop here my presentation, and I will, under the permission of the President, to request the first of our staff members. I think that Joseph King, with Anne Niamar of Norway and Dr. Nishimura, will be given the first report on the wood course. Please, Joe.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Director General De Caro. Mine will be a brief introduction to the real presentations, let's say. The 2014-2015 biennium marked the anniversaries of two important activities in our program and budget, and two very important partnerships for ICCROM. The 2014 International Course on Wood Conservation Technology was the 15th time that this course was offered and marks the 30th anniversary of the collaboration between ICCROM and the Norwegian Directorate of Cultural Heritage and other Norwegian partners. This biennium also marked the 15th anniversary of our collaboration with the ACCU Nara office in Japan. That collaboration is a yearly course which alternates between one on archaeological investigation and conservation and one on conservation of wooden structures in the Asia-Pacific region. Because these two important anniversaries both are related to the conservation of heritage made of wood, one at the international level and one at the regional level, we thought that we would break with tradition, and following on actually the very important remarks of the Director General, the importance of partnership, we thought that we would break with the tradition of having the presentations of activities to this General Assembly only being done by staff members, and in order to thank our partners, we thought that it would be appropriate to give them the floor to allow them to report on the joint activities that they are doing with ICCROM. Before I turn the floor over, however, I also would like to note that as these presentations deal primarily with conservation of wood and heritage, I thought it would be useful to also underline an earlier point, again made by the Director General, in regard to discussions that we are having with the Russian Federation toward the idea of developing an additional course on wood conservation at the World Heritage Property of Kizhi Pogost in Russia. This course is currently under discussion, and we are hoping also to involve our partners from Norway as we continue to develop that course. But I felt since the theme here is wood and conservation, or conservation of wood and heritage, that it would be worth also underlining that again. So I don't intend on standing here. I intend instead on letting our partners do the speaking. So I would like to introduce Anne Nyhammer from Norway. She is the co-coordinator of the wood course that we do in Norway, and she will be followed by Dr. Yasushi Nishimura, who is the director of the ACCU Nara office in Nara. So I will let them now speak.
Thank you, Joe. General Director, Madam Chair, delegates, distinguished colleagues, thank you for this opportunity to tell you about the International Course on Wood Conservation Technology, which celebrated its 30th anniversary last year. My name is Anna Nyhammer. I work for the Norwegian Directorate for Cultural Heritage, and I've been the director for the International Course on Wood Conservation Technology since 2012. The name is quite a mouthful. I'll call it the Wood Course for short. It's been held in Norway every other year since 1984. The program was developed following the recommendations made by UNESCO and ICCROM at the symposium in Japan in 1982. Some of you here today might recognize your younger selves, which I had up, of the first group in 1984. I don't know if that's coming round again. There was also a group photo of the class of 2014, and you'll see that fashions change, but the essence and enthusiasm is still the same. What is it about wood? And I don't just mean Norwegian wood. It is in every house, every building, in every museum all over the world. An amazing, natural, flexible material, and it's durable. If well looked after, it will keep for centuries. And how to care for it and why, that's exactly what we teach. The 6-week course gives mid-career professionals an opportunity for further education within conservation of wood and natural cultural heritage. Our aim is to spread knowledge, to encourage research, and to promote understanding of the conservation of wood. Our aim is that the knowledge gained will be a valuable resource for the work of the individual participants when they return to their home countries. The organisation of the Wood Course is a joint venture between the Norwegian Directorate for Cultural Heritage, ICCROM, and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The course is financed wholly by the Directorate for Cultural Heritage. There's no course fee, and accommodation for 6 weeks is covered. The Norwegian government also contributes extra travel and sustenance grants to several students every year. 2 student travel grants are awarded by ICCROM, who also contribute generously in kind with their expertise of running courses, the administration of announcing the course, and accepting the applications, as well as giving opening and closing lectures. We very much appreciate this cooperation with ICCROM and value their expertise and access to an international network. The course curriculum includes lectures, practical exercises, demonstrations and excursions, conservation principles and theory, preventative conservation and material knowledge. building bridges between theory and practice, academics and craftsmen are core aims. In particular, the special role of the craftsmen in Norway and the role they play in conservation projects. These are new ideas to many participants and principles that we try to convey. Excursions, workshops, and field studies are considered to be essential parts of the course and an important contributor to the creation of a social and professional network within the group. Between 25 and 30 lecturers contribute to each course. All are recognized experts within their fields and have different geographic backgrounds and professional experience. Since 1992, the course has been concluded by an examination organized by the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The exam is compulsory and gives 18 university credits if passed. The success of the course has always depended on the interaction within the group of participants. 20 participants from up to 20 different countries take part in each course. Over 300 participants from 90 different countries have attended the course so far. A good gender balance, as well as the geographic spread of each group, is important to us. We try to have most of the continents represented, and usually only one participant from each country at any one time. Choosing the group and picking the participants who will live together and study together and become a family for 6 weeks is a hugely important task. It also makes every year unique. Some say friends for life. Most retain a global network of friends and professional contacts, which they enjoy for the rest of their career. The interest for the course is still high. The number of applicants is approximately 5 times the capacity of the course, and indicative that it is still considered relevant among professionals internationally. Some key points from the evaluation are that the participants regard the knowledge obtained as beneficial and important in their daily work, that the intercultural dimension is also very important, that the network from the course has been active after the course, that the knowledge from the course has been spread to colleagues in their home country and elsewhere. Our future challenge and aim is how to spread the knowledge to an even larger group. We're already experimenting with short instruction videos and lectures online, as well as shorter regional courses targeted more at specific local issues. 2 weeks ago, we completed a 10-day regional course on wood conservation in Nepal, with special emphasis on wooden structural analysis and strengthening in the rebuilding efforts after the earthquake. The course took place in Patan, in the very heart of the World Heritage Area mentioned yesterday in the keynote speech. This too was a success and provided a focus on wood, which was much needed. We see that the model of balancing theory and practice works, that the interdisciplinary aspect with a focus on the material translates well into shorter modules. We hope we continue to develop and grow, adapting to needs and requirements with new courses, as long as they prove to be beneficial and in demand within the professional field of wood conservation. And we thank ICCROM for these 30 years of close cooperation. We look forward to continuing the development of training opportunities with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
I have the honor to have this opportunity to introduce our activities. Our office, Asia Pacific Cultural Center for UNESCO, ACC for short, has established in 1971 in Tokyo. Then our office, Cultural Heritage Protection Corporation Office, ACC Nara, has opened in 1999. Our covering area from Iran in the west to Cook Islands towards east. Shortly after the opening of our office, we held a tour of international meeting continuously on regional cooperation and training program. Based on this result, we started our activity by 3 of training program for human resource development, and this one typical important program, group training course. Now we cover 239 people already participated to program from 35 countries, and we marked 15 years cooperation with ICCROM, as Mr. Jo King mentioned. We are organizing this training program closely with ICCROM. And we also organize international conference, exchange programs are now suspended, e-learning. You can see our text on the website, and international correspondence publication. Now, I'd like to introduce more detail of joint group training course, jointly organized with ICCROM, and I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to ICCROM to continuous cooperation to our training program. This group training course covers 2 themes: preservation of wooden structure and archaeological methodology. So 2 subjects, themes. We have alternate years. Since the program is organized with ICCROM dispatch lecturers at the beginning and the end of the training course, and introduce at the beginning, internationally important issues like international charter, convention, document, and of course UNESCO, ICCROM, ICOMOS, ITC, that sort of basic thing, starting basic things, and discuss in so-called country report session. Every participant needs to give a presentation of every country by country current issues and important issues from countries. And the lecturers pick up topics from this presentation and encourage to discuss among the participants. And we move to the actual practical session. We use this wooden structure, for example, for introducing the drawings, how to draw the detail of the wooden structure. This is not only not the drawing of every wooden members, but this is a recording method. Every wooden members deteriorated or damaged or healthy condition. That observation results should be recorded. This is documentation. And also, in case of colored painted building, we also introduce how to record deteriorated area, damaged area, and then the shape and the original colors. And in case of archaeology, we also introduce how to measure the artifact, especially this pottery. This one also not only the technique to draw the map, but also observe how the pottery has made, what kind of technique has applied in creating pottery. And this will be useful information for establishing chronology. Of course, we introduce modern technology as well, 3D laser scanning and conventional inexpensive camera image nowadays can create a 3D image and 3D drawings. This is in this picture introducing the drone mounted camera mounted drone. And 3D image and 3D drawings can produce 3D printing target, artifact like replica. And this replica will be touchable, you can touchable, hand-touchable target. And of course, you can use this for museum display. 3D printing. And we take 2 nights and 3 days study tour to village and town area and study the not single house preservation, but group of buildings still living, people living heritage with fire prevention and fire alarm system and disaster management. And final stage of the course, again, the ICCROM lecturer come and introduce, review again the international issues and encourage to establish the future strategy in preservation of and restoration of cultural heritage in their own country by country. Of course, the group discussion is important, but sometimes lecturer would like to make an interview to one by one and encourage to think. Of course, that the discussion by group, entire group, is more effective. We will bring more effective result. And finally, participants submit report to us, ACC, what was the training course, what you gain, obtained through the course. And those people who submitted the final report can receive final certificate. Thank you.
Under the permission of the President, I will pass to the next issue, the next topic. And I will be just a bit short. Since some years, my predecessor started to introduce the figure of the DG special advisors. I appointed few people, which resulted to be of great help to the organization. We are 34 members, 34 staff people, and therefore we need people wanting to help. Some of them, many of them are here. They often go to missions where I could not attend or where I am just ignorant I would just mention Paolo Ferri, who is a former procurator of the Italian Republic, who is an expert in illicit traffic, and is representing me when technical issues about penal law in the international issues are on request. But there are many others, some others, not so many. And one of them, quite mandatory, is Gaël de Guichen. Is more than an advisor, is a staff member, a former staff member, and so. And he has been, I would not say just very useful, but it has been a pillar for the revitalization of a course that he introduced. He thought about it, it's reorg. Catherine Antomarchi has developed, and together with him, now they are offering to many countries which have requested, it is not us who have offered the course. We have just asked, do you want to have it? And the answer a couple of years ago was absolutely astonishing. Many countries which we consider safe, there is no country who doesn't need reorg, practically. And many of them are ready to offer the possibility of having at least regional courses and so. So I'm very happy to call Catherine and Gaël to explain what happened in the last biennium. Can you come, please?
No, I'm not Catherine Antomarchi. She's there.
She's there. She's shy.
Elle est très timide. Catherine, auriez-vous la gentillesse de venir? Merci. Madame la Présidente, Madame la Présidente du Conseil, Monsieur le Directeur Général, Messieurs et Mesdames les délégués, j'ai le plaisir de vous présenter ce programme qui est un programme un peu particulier, c'est un programme tout nouveau. Il n'a pas, comme les programmes précédents, 30 ou 15 ans d'âge. On est tout jeune, on s'excuse. C'est un programme qui traite des réserves dans vos musées, les musées de tous vos pays. Quand vous pensez musée, vous avez visité un musée, vous êtes entré à un musée, vous avez peut-être quelques-uns d'entre vous coupé le ruban au moment d'une exposition temporaire, vous imaginez quelque chose de tout beau, tout propre. Mais en fait, les objets que vous voyez représentent seulement 10% de la collection. Les restes, les 90%, sont en réserve. Et en gros, ça représente des millions et des millions d'objets qui ne sont pas souvent vus, connus, qui sont cachés à la vue du public. Quand vous pensez maintenant réserve, vous pensez des beaux endroits, tout propres, tout nets, etc., comme celui-ci. En fait, bien souvent, c'est comme ça, oublié, couvert de poussière, en désordre. C'est en Europe, ce n'est pas une question de continent, ce n'est pas une question de pays, ce n'est pas une question d'argent, ce n'est même pas une question de musée, c'est une question de département de musée. Voilà en Europe, voilà en Amérique du Nord, dans les Caraïbes, voilà dans les Émirats arabes unis, voilà en Afrique, voilà les Asie-Pacifique. Je ne voudrais pas vous faire une série de musées des horreurs, mais c'est un peu ce qu'on peut rencontrer si, non pas on demande, mais si on vous laisse entrer dans les réserves. Parce que la plupart du temps, on le demande et on ne vous laisse pas entrer. Pourquoi? Parce que la situation est, disons-le, assez lamentable. Donc, l'ICCROM a lancé en 1911 l'idée de faire quelque chose dans ces endroits cachés. Et pour savoir quelle était la situation, M. Velasquez disait hier, il faut mesurer, mesurer, mesurer. On a voulu mesurer. Et donc, on a fait une enquête. On est parti d'une constatation bien claire. Une enquête dans 136 pays qui ont répondu, 1490 musées. Voilà les résultats. Voilà les pays qui ont répondu. Quel est le résultat? En 2 mots, on compte à nouveau, un musée sur 3, une réserve n'a pas une claire responsabilité de qui est responsable de la réserve. Un musée sur 3 a un bâtiment en mauvaises conditions. Un musée sur 4 a des collections qui sont inexistantes, des documentations qui sont inexistantes ou incomplètes. Monsieur Velasquez le disait yesterday, comment peut-on parler du patrimoine quand on ne sait pas de quoi on parle? Un musée sur 2 a du mobilier ou inexistant, ou pas adapté, ou super rempli. Donc, partie de cette constatation qui représente réponse de 60% de ces musées, des 500 musées qui ont répondu. Qu'à 60% de la situation est comme ceci, pose un problème, plus ou moins grave. Donc, partie de cette constatation, l'ICCROM, constatation qui a été reprise par des différents journaux. Partant de cette constatation, l'ICCROM fait de cette étude, l'ICCROM lance en 2009-2011 une première tentative grâce à un argent qui avait été mis à disposition par l'UNESCO, à produire un matériel qui va s'appeler réorganisation dans les musées. En 2011, vous-même ou vos prédécesseurs votent à la fin de l'Assemblée générale une résolution demandant à l'ICCROM de vraiment se confronter à la situation. Et en 2012, on fait appel à des partenaires. Le directeur général l'a dit, nous ne pouvons pas travailler sans des partenaires. Et ces partenaires, ce sont les institutions nationales que vous représentez ici. Depuis 2012 et 2015, qu'est-ce qu'on a fait pratiquement? Des cours, on peut appeler workshop ou atelier comme on veut, des cours. On a créé du matériel didactique, parce que c'est très bien d'enseigner, mais si on n'a pas du matériel didactique, ça ne va pas très loin. Et on a commencé à former des formateurs. Parce que l'ICCROM peut faire tous les cours qu'il veut, s'il n'y a pas un effet boule de neige, et on n'ira pas très très loin, étant donné que, comme le directeur général le disait, nous sommes 35. Voilà quelques résultats de cette année. En Inde, voilà musée Indira Gandhi, avant, après. Ce sont des cours qui durent 15 jours. L'objectif est de remettre les réserves dans un état décent. Ça demande 2000 heures de travail. Voilà en Irak, musée archéologique, 10 jours après. Voilà en Serbie, un musée technique. Voilà après. Toujours 10 jours de travail. Voilà au Canada. Dans ce cas-là, c'est une bibliothèque et des archives. Maintenant, on a du plaisir à travailler dans un endroit comme cela. Voilà en Chine. Ce cours vient d'avoir lieu, c'est terminé il y a de ça 1 mois. Voilà au Musée Royal de Belgique, au Musée Royal d'Art d'Histoire à Bruxelles, avant, après. L'important, c'est que non seulement que nous le sachions, et M. Velasquez hier l'a dit, il est important que ça soit connu par le public, qu'on ne se soit pas une maladie cachée. Et donc, important, la presse, l'information de la presse, la radio, la télévision, les journaux, qui en parlent. C'est-à-dire que le personnel se rende compte du problème et accepte d'en parler. Et ça a des résultats positifs, parce que les décideurs, les fameux décideurs dont on parle, donnent de l'argent à ce moment-là. Ils disent on est tout à fait d'accord, voilà 15 000 $ qui ont été mis à disposition de ce musée par l'administration au Canada. Réfléchissons un peu. Quel est le but d'une réserve? Est-ce que c'est un but technique dont seul s'occupe les conservateurs, les administrateurs et les restaurateurs, ou bien est-ce que ça a un but social, c'est-à-dire que, certes, des problèmes techniques. Alors, attendez. Voilà. Où non seulement les conservateurs et les restaurateurs ont leur responsabilité, mais le public a sa responsabilité. Parce qu'on parle de collections publiques qui doivent être mises à la disposition du public. Donc, après la réorganisation, possibilité de visite par le public, pas seulement un jour par an, possibilité de visite d'écoles qui vont étudier, qui vont reconnaître leur patrimoine. Ici, c'est aussi un cours que nous avons organisé en Nouvelle-Calédonie, de culture kanak. Possibilité de faire des expositions temporaires par les collections qui ont été découvertes. Ici, c'est en Inde, il y a ça 2 mois, où à la fin du cours, on a fait une exposition temporaire sur les quelques objets qui avaient été découverts de valeur importante. Voici le résultat donc depuis 2 ans. Ce résultat, que ce soit en Serbie, en Inde, en Chine, la Nouvelle-Calédonie n'est pas là, le Canada et la Belgique. Ceci n'a été possible, évidemment, ça a produit évidemment plus de 100 professionnels qui ont appris, et les personnes qui sont choisies ne sont pas des élèves, ce sont des responsables de collection qui ne sont choisis que parce qu'ils ont une réserve à réorganiser. Donc ils ont été choisis et lorsqu'ils rentrent chez eux, eh bien, ils mettent en application et ils réorganisent leurs réserves. Et puis, évidemment, il faut faire boule de neige. Il y a la seule ville de Mexico, j'ai appris la semaine dernière, la seule ville de Mexico a 300 musées. Donc, il faut reformer des jeunes professionnels, c'est long à former, mais il faut commencer tout de suite, il ne faut pas attendre des années. Voilà des jeunes professionnels en Belgique, en Inde, au Canada, en Nouvelle-Calédonie, en Serbie, qui ont appris et commencent à enseigner. Pour ceci, il y a besoin d'un site, que ces connaissances ne soient pas gardées par nous seuls. Et donc maintenant, grâce à Internet, on a un site en anglais, en français et en espagnol, parce qu'il ne faut pas oublier qu'il n'y a pas qu'une seule langue au monde. 1213 personnes qui sont des utilisateurs réguliers. Nous avons produit un livre, voilà, que vous pourrez voir après, qui doit avoir 160 pages, où la méthode, on a mis au point une méthode. La méthode est connue. Voilà un système pour mesurer l'état du musée, l'état de la réserve. On mesure. Merci, Monsieur Velasquez. Voilà le livre dans lequel il y a beaucoup d'illustrations en couleur de tout ce que l'on peut faire et tout ce que l'on devrait faire. Donc, matériel technique mis à disposition des personnes si elles veulent. Non, voilà, c'est bien. Si elles veulent mettre en pratique. Alors, le directeur général a parlé de partenaires, je vais en reparler. Nous avons eu une énorme aide par l'Institut canadien de conservation qui a lui-même repris le sujet et a lancé ce programme comme un programme majeur de l'Institut. Nous venons d'être aidés par l'Institut royal du patrimoine artistique en Belgique, à Bruxelles, qui a organisé un cours national. Nous avons été aidés par l'Indira Gandhi Center for Art en Inde, qui a aussi a organisé un cours régional en Inde. Vous imaginez, ils ont commencé déjà à faire ça dans 2 régions et s'apprêtent de faire ça dans une 3e région de l'Inde. Nous avons été aidés par Belgrade, par l'Institut central de Belgrade, qui a organisé un cours régional à ce moment-là, au niveau des Balkans. Et nous venons d'être aidés par le SAC et le TSAC, dont vous voyez les sigles ici, en Chine, et dont tous les représentants de ces instituts sont dans la salle et vous pourrez leur poser des questions, qui a eu la grande générosité de ne pas faire un cours uniquement national ou régional, mais international, en invitant 10 pays à participer à ce cours, 10 pays dont déjà 2 d'entre eux ont demandé de faire le cours dans leur propre pays, entre autres, je citerai le Portugal et la Grèce. Et ça s'est passé il y a 1 mois, et déjà le Portugal et la Grèce ont proposé de faire un cours chez eux. Et je dois dire que tout ceci s'est fait grâce au financement, sans $1 de l'ICCROM, même pas €1, de l'ICCROM, dans le budget de l'ICCROM, mais grâce à une fondation, la Fondation Annenberg, et grâce à la participation directe des 5 pays que j'ai nommés précédemment. Non seulement l'important, évidemment, des collections a été sauvé. M. Velasquez, hier, disait qu'il y avait des dangers intensifs et des dangers extensifs. Les dangers extensifs, c'est les dangers de tous les jours qui s'accumulent et qu'on oublie, et à la fin, ça fait un gros danger. Eh bien, maintenant, le cas des réserves, c'est un danger intensif. Maintenant, on a sauvé les collections, on les a mis à disposition du public et, plus important, et c'est beaucoup plus important, on a motivé des personnes qui maintenant se rendent compte de l'importance de leur métier, de l'importance qui sont des gardiens du patrimoine, qui sont les gardiens de la mémoire de leur pays. Et voilà la photo de la fin d'un cours. Vous voyez l'enthousiasme. Alors, maintenant, où en sommes-nous? Qu'est-ce qui va se passer après cette Assemblée générale, la 29e? Eh bien, quelle va être l'expansion? Ça dépend de vous, totalement. Alors, ce qui est sûr, c'est que dans les 8 prochaines années, la stratégie est engager des institutions nationales pour des stratégies nationales. L'ICCROM ne peut pas faire le travail à votre place, mais on peut vous donner une orientation. Développer plus d'exemples dans les États membres. Augmenter le nombre des utilisateurs de la méthodologie, car il y a une méthodologie qui va s'améliorer, mais elle existe. Augmenter le nombre des enseignants et des chefs d'équipe. Pour le moment, nous sommes peu. Et finalement, assurer l'accès public des collections publiques. Pour mettre en place cette stratégie, l'ICCROM, grâce à l'Assemblée générale, devrait évidemment lever des fonds et l'ICCROM devrait évidemment renforcer le personnel. Actuellement, il y a une personne qui a été mise partiellement à disposition par la France, mais ce n'est pas suffisant, pas du tout, pour gérer un programme tel que celui-ci, parce que aujourd'hui, déjà, les prochains partenaires qui se sont annoncés sont le Brésil, le Canada, le Chili, l'Égypte, la France, la Grèce, l'Inde, l'Italie, Mexico et le Nigeria. Je vous remercie, mesdames et messieurs.
Il y a des lunettes ici.
Ah, mais c'est l'Assemblée générale.
Oui. En effet, oui, ce problème des réserves, c'est un problème qui m'a conditionné pendant toute ma carrière chez le ministère des Affaires culturelles. Et pensez seulement que c'est une question qui augmente d'une façon exponentielle. Pensez simplement que les objets dans les réserves, simplement pour les archives, du point de vue des archives publiques, ou du point de vue de la recherche archéologique préventive, augmente chaque année d'un million et million d'objets, dont seulement une petite partie va finir dans les expositions. Tout le reste va dans les réserves. Les réserves ne sont tout à fait pas préparées pour recevoir ces objets-là. Donc, c'est quelque chose de laquelle on devrait tenir compte un peu plus que pour les grandes expositions, les trésors de ça ou les trésors de là. Bien, maintenant, c'est le tour à Parnatandom que j'invite à venir. Culture cannot wait, protecting cultural heritage during crisis times. Ah oui, c'est la vidéo.
Violent protests have erupted at a World Heritage Site, injuring people and damaging artifacts.
Come help!
Fortunately, this is the fictional country of Vodastrana. The wounded are all actors, and culture is actually the biggest casualty. Enter a real-life team of international experts. They must decide what can be saved and which of the competing factions should take charge.
But until that meeting, I want to take out that flag.
The flag has
That
to go
flag
down.
has to go down.
Our goal is to take an assessment of the damage that was caused to the heritage once people are safely out of off the site, and to see what we can do to help salvage that.
Well, the chaos has subsided and the injured have been taken away for treatment. And now these experts from the Philippines, Georgia and Iran can get on with the really serious business of saving cultural heritage. This simulation has been organised by UNESCO and ICCROM, an international organisation worried about the growing threat to global heritage. Islamic State has destroyed some of civilization's greatest treasures, but the threat is everywhere. From earthquakes in Nepal to poverty and conflict in the Philippines, where displaced communities are losing their languages and traditions.
We are poor, and the only thing that we can leave to our children or to the next generation is what we take care of at this moment.
Many of the participants on this course have first-hand knowledge of cultural emergencies. Ihor Pashevelo is a Ukrainian museum expert.
When mass protests started in Kyiv last winter, 2 museums was directly in the conflict zone. One museum robbed, looted. The other museum kept very well, safe, because the museum team stayed there 24 hours a day and they had strategy. But it also showed us that we are not ready. We are not ready to respond to emergencies like this.
More than 100 curators, archaeologists and other cultural workers have now taken part in this course, a small but growing army of experts with a mission to save the world's heritage. Jane O'Brien, BBC News, the Netherlands.
Thank you. What you just saw was, as was said, the BBC footage of a simulation of a scenario that involved bombing at an important heritage site, made more complex by incessant rains and rising water level of a nearby lake. And this simulation was part of the international course on first aid to cultural heritage in times of crisis, organized in 2015 in the Netherlands, earlier this year in in April. Before reporting on this activity, I would like to briefly outline why a course on first aid was introduced, why training on first aid was introduced by ICCROM. The 2015 Global Assessment Report of UNICR that was mentioned yesterday indicates that from 1980 to 2012, we have lost 42 million life years of social and economic development in form of disaster losses. Furthermore, there has been 233% increase in extreme weather events. What was also mentioned yesterday, that these are these extensive risks that we are facing. As if this is not enough, according to a World Bank study, 1.2 billion people live in conflict-afflicted areas, and the UN Refugee Agency says that it has registered 18.1 million refugees. But mind you, this number does not include people who have been internally displaced in their countries due to disasters or conflicts. Whether induced by conflict or by a natural disaster, every humanitarian crisis has a cultural dimension. And cultural heritage can be impacted in many ways by such events. It is often destroyed, it is targeted, as we are seeing, as we are witnessing, or undermined, but it is also venerated in such crises, as it becomes a symbol of hope or recovery. And sometimes, after destruction, new heritage emerges. Yet the question remains, is it possible to protect cultural heritage amidst an unfolding crisis? If yes, how? And who all could possibly help? Seeking answers to these questions and trying to gather different perspectives, ICCROM made an attempt to organize three international courses in 2010, 2011, and 2012. These were organized with the financial support of the Italian Ministry of Culture, and I must say this was a very generous support, in cooperation with UNESCO, the International Committee of the Blue Shield, the National Archives of the Netherlands, and the Italian Red Cross. These courses allowed ICCROM to analyze how conservation actions can unintentionally help strengthen narrow or divisive interpretations of the past, or feed into identity-based discourses. At the same time, we were able to identify strategies for protecting cultural heritage in tandem with humanitarian and peacekeeping operations. This experience has been gathered in form of an online book which features our participants' case studies of actively protecting cultural heritage in conflict areas and is available. After 3 successful international courses, we did not have the funds to continue the training. However, this training got a new lease of life as the UNESCO National Commission of the Netherlands endorsed it in its strategy for protecting cultural heritage in the Middle East and North Africa region, and invited ICCROM to hold a course in the Netherlands to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the 1954 Hague Convention. The Smithsonian Institution joined this partnership and strengthened our action. The Netherlands Ministry of Education and Culture, the Dutch Culture Center for International Cooperation, and the Prins Claus Fund financially supported this activity. 15 other Dutch institutions that ranged from army to the municipality of Amsterdam provided in-kind support to this 4-week course. The topic of the course was expanded to include natural disasters as well as complex emergencies that involve a combination of natural and man-made disasters. The 20 participants who attended this course were drawn from different cultural institutions, and some of them also came from humanitarian aid agencies and disaster risk management departments. The training was completely hands-on, and the sessions covered both movable and immovable heritage, and there were topics like damage assessment, stabilization, and also how do you move towards recovery. But recovery was not so well covered. Maybe in the future courses, we have to look into this. This training also emphasizes soft skills. So situation analysis, working with multiple actors, crisis communication, mediation, and negotiation. So we have very intense sessions, and we put participants through practical exercises when we organize these kind of sessions. With 4 international courses, we have been able to prepare 81 cultural first aiders who come from 55 countries. And many of these participants actually are working in active, risk-prone zones, and they have started to develop their national teams of cultural first aiders. They have been strengthened, this action has been strengthened by the Cultural Emergency Response Program of the Prins Claus Fund, based in the Netherlands. From 2011 to 2015, Prins Claus Fund developed a unique partnership with ICCROM and has been offering seed grants to first aid trainees to either replicate the training in their countries or carry out first aid field projects. As a result, in 17 countries, we've had 34 first aid field projects and workshops. This follow-up does not include the activities carried out by ICCROM Auditor Center in Egypt and Lebanon and Syria, because here you can see the countries that have been covered by Prins Claus Fund action is Bosnia, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, Liberia, Nigeria, Uganda, Ukraine, Georgia, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Zimbabwe, Colombia, and Guatemala. Guatemala, there will be 4 workshops later this year in Guatemala, or maybe next year, because they've just had a change of the government. Besides doing training at an international level, ICCROM has also been successful in mounting responses in Haiti in 2010, in Egypt after the bombing at the Islamic Museum in 2014, and most recently in Nepal. So what's next? In the coming year, we will be organizing another 5-week training in Washington, D.C. with Smithsonian Institution and several other US organizations. We will be also working on refining a methodology for damage and loss assessment, which will be compliant with both the MIRA, which is the multi-stakeholder initial rapid assessment carried out by the humanitarians that precedes post-disaster needs assessment, and which will also be compliant with the post-disaster needs assessment. We have gained some insights from our work in Nepal, and we'll be feeding that experience into it, and we'll be working with our extended community of first aiders to test this methodology. With ICCROM Auditor, we'll be organizing new activities on the theme of first aid, but details of which will be shared by my colleague, Dr. Zaki Aslan. Besides the immediate activities, there are mid to long-term strategies that we are seeking support for here today. As we heard yesterday, we do need to invest in risk reduction and preparedness for cultural heritage as well. And it would be great if our member states would will help us to strengthen and our action on enhancing capacity for risk mitigation and preparedness. As mentioned by Mr. Velasquez yesterday, we cannot report damage to something that we are not aware of. Therefore, we need to create baseline information on different types of cultural assets, country by country. And this is an appeal to all the member states attending today that we need to start this action now. ICCROM was able to assist in Haiti, Egypt, and Nepal simply because it had professional network and committed partners But what if we have 3 major disasters in the same year? Where is the capacity to deploy professionals and provide on-the-ground assistance? We need to enhance capacity for emergency actions. This also means that we have to integrate culture into existing humanitarian relief and recovery structures and develop coordination mechanisms with the humanitarian sector. ICCROM is small, but together with you, we have a great outreach. So, to conclude, I would like to show these images from Paris, Haiti, Nepal, and Egypt that highlight that whether conflict or disaster, culture symbolizes hope and harmony. And in the words of our Director General, it is the shared ground. Therefore, culture cannot wait. Let's work together to strengthen it. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks to Aparna. And now I will call Gamini Vieseruia to give his report about the people-centered approach from a course to a cross-cutting theme in all our programs. The floor is yours.
Madam Chair, Chair of the Council, Director General, dear delegates, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. In fact, I came at the right sequence. 6 months after the earthquake in Kathmandu, 2 weeks ago, I was there on a reactive monitoring mission. In fact, the big heritage, the palaces and all these things are being looked after, taken care of, lots of donors. But the people who are part and parcel of that heritage and also lost their little heritage are still waiting for help. So in that context, I think my presentation is relevant. I'm here to present the latest training course on people-centered approaches to conservation, engaging communities in conservation of nature and culture, see the difference, implemented in October this year. The course was a result of the program on promoting people-centered approaches to conservation, which was approved by this General Assembly in 2011. Before I highlight key aspects of the course, let me briefly explain or recap the reasons that led to the development of the program. The need for people-centered approaches to conservation evolved from ICCROM's Living Heritage Sites program, which emphasized the need to focus on people and their interaction with heritage in conservation practice. For this purpose, a much broader approaches which extend beyond the conventional material focus was envisaged. We were looking for an approach capable of addressing living dimensions of heritage, connected communities, cultural continuity, and benefits. Indeed, such thoughts appeared at a time when cultural heritage discourse was expanding and focusing on people on one hand and inventing new categories of heritage such as agricultural landscapes where people are an integral part. What you see here is honey rice terraces in China, where we cannot separate people from heritage. If there's no people, there's no heritage. It was during this time ICCROM had engaged with natural heritage sector with a view to address nature-culture interlinkages, of which people are also the strongest element. Soon, we realized that IUCN, or the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is now affiliated to ICCROM Council, has advanced much beyond the cultural heritage sector, some of you may not agree with me, in addressing or integrating people-focused issues into conservation practice, ranging from livelihoods to rights to conflicts, you name anything. On the other hand, the World Heritage Convention, which has brought both cultural and natural heritage sectors under one umbrella, has in the recent past focused heavily on addressing people issues, some of which you can see in the screen. Also, thanks to World Heritage, both cultural and natural heritage sectors have actively engaged in promoting the sustainable development paradigm, which is about bringing benefits to both people and heritage. How can we promote these ideas among practitioners was the challenge. The sustainability debate linked us with the global community through the Agenda 2030, which is about putting people and planet first. Since the adoption of the agenda, UNESCO has emphasized that its cultural convention should be at its service. World Heritage Policy document on sustainable development, already developed and will be adopted by its General Assembly this week, reinforces the rationale for a new approaches like the one under review. It was under these circumstances that the program on promoting people-centered approaches was developed. The people-centered approaches are about addressing one of the core components of heritage management, namely the people and their interaction with heritage. How can we achieve this goal? We believe that this can be achieved most effectively by engaging communities in conservation and management. For this reason, ICCROM's People-Centered Approaches program focuses primarily on community engagement. Community engagement is about strengthening their ability to participate meaningfully in the process of making conservation and management decisions. The new course, therefore, is the first major steps towards promoting people-centered approaches among practitioners who make the changes in the world. It was open to practitioners from culture and nature sectors, which is quite unusual, and with teaching inputs from both sectors. Let me briefly introduce the new course. We set out the goals for the participants primarily to think outside their conventional boxes and engage in a wider debate focusing on people. We had 61 applications from 42 member states, and 20 participants from 19 countries were selected, and from almost all geographical regions. And the course contained 4 key modules, which you can see on the screen. Module 1 devoted to discuss the rationale or the justification for the course with input from both cultural and natural heritage sectors, reflecting the issues related to people in their respective areas. Module 2 tried to highlight the benefits and the need to address them in conservation practice. Some of the highlights were the sessions on sustainable development and the applicability of traditional knowledge systems. In Module 3, we provided an overview of existing knowledge and tools available to practitioners for effective engagement of communities. The course comprises of lectures, interactive sessions of sharing experience and field activities. As you can see, the red and green, 53% of the time was allocated to sharing experience in the field and in the field activities. Module 4 on sharing experience had 2 activities. The first activity was to share the experience from 19 case studies focusing on people by practitioners from 19 countries covering all regions of the world. They varied from engaging farming community in Ireland to traditional villages in China. They ranged from working with indigenous communities in Australia to protecting marine environments in Belize. The second part of the module 4 was devoted to interacting with 4 project teams in the Naples area, working on different aspects of focusing people and engaging them in management. We didn't talk about archaeology of Pompeii, but we were talking about how the Pompeii project is trying to engage people in one of the highest densely populated areas in Europe. Yeah. Finally, participants engage in developing a new holistic vision based on people-centered approaches for conservation and management of the heritage of the Bay of Naples. Hopefully this will be useful in the future. And of course, in terms of evaluations, the participants highly valued all aspects of the course, asked about their view on combining practitioners from nature and culture. They all said yes, 100%. They considered this approach was relevant and professionally enriching. Overall satisfaction of the participants was very high. What you see green is the very good rating, and light green is good, yellow is adequate. We don't have poor or very poor. You can see the percentages. Yeah. So we have learned many lessons that can help improve the course, but most striking thing was the view that people-centered approach just could set the future conservation agenda. And our deepest appreciation to these organizations for making this program, this course, a reality. IUCN, Swiss government, which helped us in developing nature-culture interlinkages, Norwegian Ministry of Environment, World Heritage Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Gamini. As an original Napolitan, I would say that I had no part in the choice. I was very scary about this, but I hope so much that one of the hopes that is expressed, that the community of the Bay of Naples becomes a prosperous, safe, and could be in the time that it needs to be realized. Now I will call the next one is Katrina, if I don't mind, to come on the here and to speak about the CollAsia collaboration. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you. Yes. Good morning. I'm Katrina Simila, and I thank you for this opportunity to address you today. I want to talk to you about some points about the CollAsia program, which was born with this millennium. In the beginning of 2000, the General Assembly and the Council pointed out that ICCROM has not been very active in working in Southeast Asia, especially with movable heritage. And so we set into action. Today I want to focus on one aspect of this program, which has to do with building networks. And I will do that by illustrating, discussing some core aspects of 2 activities that were organized that mobilized a total of 78 people from the region and beyond. Since its inception, the overall aim of the CollAsia program has been to improve the conditions for conservation of Southeast Asian collections. This has been seen as a challenge because there are a lot of changes in the role and the challenges of the heritage. Especially in the case of collections, which are sometimes have been overlooked because of the gigantic operations that have been undertaken with built heritage. So we have set ourselves to build strong institutions to work with the collections, and this is done by strengthening people. You cannot have strong institutions if the people who work there are not strong. Since in the beginning, the fundamental core partnerships for us were SEAMEOSPAFA, based in Thailand, which is a regional intergovernmental organization, and the Getty Foundation, which, as we know, is a private foundation working on an international scale. This partnership originally made possible the creation and all the activities of CollAsia, and it was very successful. However, the first 10 years were over, and we said, okay, now CollAsia maybe has to stand by for a little while. It is thanks to the generosity of the Korean Cultural Heritage Administration in supporting the work of ICCROM that we have been able to continue to move CollAsia program to a second phase, and as well as to undertake a series of ICCROM Korean Heritage Administration fora, which are organized in collaboration with Gamini, whom you just heard. At the first stage of CollAsia, we organized a series of activities. You have heard now about several ICCROM activities, actions, which have focused on developing courses and activities on a specific theme over time. Here, it was more a question of strengthening regional collaboration over a diversity of actions, of themes. It was important for us that the most important element is the willingness of a national institution to address a theme together with their colleagues in Southeast Asia. So, for example, if intangible heritage was being addressed by our colleagues in Brunei, they said, we want CollAsia activity to come and join us in this contemplation and work on this issue. The same with climate change, where we went to Singapore. Underwater archaeological collections in the Philippines, where they had a very strong series of activities. In this current biennium, closing biennium, we organized 2 activities, and the first one was on conservation of metals in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The conservation department in Phnom Penh has several important projects on conservation of metals, and since many of Asia's most valued treasures are metal objects, it was very well received by the CollAsia community to join our colleagues there. A key quality of CollAsia activities is that the courses are organized in heritage institutions. So we are surrounded by the theme of our work every day when we walk into the classroom. And few places are nicer than the National Museum of Cambodia, as you can see on the screen. On the other hand, equally important are the people who join us there. And I'm very pleased to announce that our colleague in the yellow circle, Ita Yulita, who is the head of preventive conservation in Jakarta National Museum, has just joined us here after some delayed flights. So welcome, Ita. And here she was in Jakarta. A development of the CollAsia program is that currently the CollAsia network itself can undertake most of the preparatory work in the region. They know what is needed, they know what CollAsia activity implies. So, Ita from Jakarta, Lalita from Malaysia, and Samnang from Cambodia are here together explaining to the national director what CollAsia is all about. Our way of working is very much based on building learning opportunities together. So team teaching is a constant in these activities. They are interactive sessions. We try to avoid sessions where a lot of people are sitting in the dark listening to a PowerPoint. We usually try to keep it to 10 or 20% of the working. As a network, we also have incorporated into the CollAsia tribe several people from our existing networks. Here we have colleagues from CollAsia, from Korea, there's myself, there's an Italian metal expert, there's somebody from Indonesia, from Malaysia, another Malaysian, and the Cambodians. And so it is important that at this stage of the program, the former participants come and teach and tell the results of their own research to the new colleagues. Also, it is important for us to have these teams discuss and debate in the classroom to show that professional debate is a part of our identity. In all of our training activities, we try to link with traditional knowledge systems on the theme. In Cambodia, there are exceptionally skillful craftsmen who work on metals today. It is not important that every single person in Southeast Asia knows these Cambodian craftsmen, but it is important that they are all inspired to go in their own countries to look and find the traditional knowledge holders. It is an immense resource and greatly underused by heritage institutions. After the 3 weeks course in Cambodia, the following year, beginning of this year, we went to Sarawak, Malaysia, because that museum in Sarawak was planning a major new building project. So the issue of handling, packing, and moving collections was very vital for them at this current stage of their working. Again, we went with our Korean colleagues on the Korean funding, thank you very much, and with our colleagues who are my poster colleague, who has joined us here and whom I encourage you to approach to discuss more about the significance of the CollAsia program to the Korean heritage institutions. Sarawak Museum is one of the oldest in Asia. It was established in the late 1800s, and it is on natural history and ethnographic collections are its special strength. Again, we had a CollAsian colleague who received this activity into his institution. Sometimes, often, as Gael was pointing out, museums, we have a perception of museums. Often museums are seen as very static places where dust gathers. However, objects move. It is not only an issue of the international loan exhibition and the question of imported foams and crates, but it's a question of little movements which are very risky and should be taken seriously. You cannot order people to work in a good way. It is important that people learn to think as a team and to establish healthy working culture about the daily routines. Thanks to the internet, we all have access to guidelines, recommendations, best practices. We should not accept any of them or adapt them blindly. We have to critically think, and that again happens better together. It is crucial that we understand the vulnerability of our collection and use that as the key consideration. Here, the vulnerability issue has affected a flower pot from the market, but it could be in our collection. In the future years, currently, what the CollAsia network is very interested in is in developing networks towards boosting research. CollAsia program itself cannot fund it because it is beyond our scope. But we can try to strengthen different kind of ideas that the network itself has. We are also interested in South-South collaboration because we feel that this is very important for the Southeast Asian professional community to have links with, for example, the ASEAN region, with Latin America, and beyond. Also, not only people move, not only objects move, but also people move. And there are, from Southeast Asia, very important diaspora communities within the region and all over the world. It is not only important as possible funding, additional funding source, but also a community which tackles with the questions of identity and the role of the collections. We want to harvest ideas of our working and make them, shape them into a way that we can share it with others. We want to use collections more as a resource. We want to make it an active part of the society. We want to strengthen the concept of different kinds of partnerships and also find a way of working with bilateral initiatives which are taking place in different parts of the region. We want to, CollAsian community, we want to share the benefits of our experience within the region and beyond. And we want to thank you for this opportunity. Again.
Colleagues, we are going to break for lunch now and continue this session after lunch with the presentation from Joe King. And you will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff in terms of their presentations, and this will happen after all the presentations have been made. So I am asking that you return to the assembly room at 2:30, and we will continue the presentations. Thank you.